What if the history we were taught barely scratched the surface of the truth? What if entire civilizations have been erased from the record? Their wisdom still echoing, waiting to be reclaimed. As we move toward the golden intersection of timelines, hidden knowledge is rising, weaving together ancient memory and a cosmic destiny. What does it mean to reclaim our true inheritance in this planetary transformation? Welcome to Ancient Futures, reclaiming time, memory, and destiny.
Tune in with the Galactic Spin podcast and expand your view.
In Lakesh, and greetings to everyone and anyone tuning in with us in this now moment. Welcome to the Galactic Spin podcast. My name is Mikuak Rai, Kin 126, joined by my brother in synchronicity, Ruben Llinás, Kin 113. In Lakesh, dear brother.
In Lakesh, brother, and good night or a good morning to whoever is tuned in to the Galactic Spin on this 19th episode. It's such an honor to share this virtual room with you and co-pilot the Timeship Earth into new time event horizons. So also great to have the opportunity to share today so much more about the prophetic and ancestral origins of everything that we have been talking about during the last 18 episodes. So super happy to be here and honored.
Absolutely. It's a special moment for sure, and certainly want to give a shout out to everybody out there tuning in, and a special shout out to Ishel for that amazing intro video as well. It really sets the tone for today's episode and intention, as we will get into the number 19 bears many layers of resonance and meaning to the process we're now experiencing in real time. So we're excited to share a lot of these layers and just make them conscious. And with that, let's go ahead and get right into it. We're going to tap in and jump in on Earth's pulse. Let's get to it. Right on. And as we can see, one of the main factors we've wanted to continue to amplify during this phase is the fact that we've been within a 49-day window, a planetary parade of 49 days. And we are about maybe halfway through it at this point. And so as we see where we are currently, Gregorian February 10th, we know that this culminates on February 28th when Mercury joins the array of the planets that are participating and attending this planetary parade. And we know that 49 is a very special number. We're reminded of Gene Key 49 in particular that we're actually passing through right now. Shout out to Ishel as well, as it has recently her birthday, and we're in her Gene Key window. So as she's navigating this new frequency band, we're definitely witnessing some very interesting things emerge, both personally and also collectively.
Yes, and let's remember that 49 is also like a perfect matrix or perfect cycle of 7 cycles of 7 units each. It can be 7 years, 7 days, 7 baktuns, like in the fact that we are now in that movement, in that bridge from December 21st, 2012 to 4772, which is going to be the completion of 7 cycles of 20 generations each. So let's remember that every time that we speak about Mayan time, we speak about fractal time. So this cycle of 7 repeats at different scales and at different levels of resonance. Actually, the 7 is the tone of resonance. So 7 cycles of 7 units is a very special moment in time, and 7 cycles of 7 days here is what we know is the window known as the Bardo in the Buddhist tradition, which is really the transition of the soul from one world to the next one, and that in the Christian tradition is called Pentecost, the resurrection of or the ascension of the soul after 49 days. So this is a special window for humanity, and of course a lot has happened in these 49 days. We are feeling an acceleration taking place, and the movement towards the golden intersection after we cross also that 260-day window. We can feel also like a lot of movement, and right now we are actually preparing the ground to here in Mayan lands. I'm from the Mayan jungle, transmitting this special episode, and such a beautiful opportunity to anchor these codes in this land during this parade and during the many transformations that are happening on the planet. So today is a very special episode, and I think that we better dive in, because there is nothing much really on Earth's pulse that we can say more than consider the big picture, that we are in this window of transformation, this window of rebirth and revolution, which is this code of the 49, and bearing that in mind and holding it in our hearts, that a lot of is changing, and we are going, and we are part of that change. We are that actually the only permanent or secure thing in life is change. So we are adjusting for the new changes, and this is really an opportunity, this 49-day window of this planetary alignment, an opportunity to align with something bigger and something greater.
Absolutely. I appreciate how you laid that out. And it's true. We've been joined by our guest backstage, in fact, so I want to just get him prepared to come and join us on screen. So give me one moment as I make a slight adjustment here, because we're excited to have this conversation with him. And I want to do a little bit of an honor to introduce him properly, as he's a very dear brother of mine who is very engaged in this movement of shifting consciousness by shifting time. And with that said, I just want to set the stage before we bring him to the stage, because he is certainly, I got my notes have ended up somewhere here. One second, I'm pulling myself together here as we're getting it done in real time. So as you mentioned, Earth's Pulse is what it is. We're riding this transition through a planetary parade. It's a very special, sacred 49-day window that culminates on Gregorian February 28th. And as that is happening, we know that there are many changes happening as above, so below in this transformative experience that we're all navigating. And it's being expressed in various ways. One reason we wanted to really have the conversation this evening was to focus in on some of the layers that are being revealed at this time of great transformation, in many ways, in many spaces. And among them, and we'll get into the conversation, of course, but among them are the antiquities and origin stories from whence these technologies and these sciences come. And we want to really help orient an audience to a consideration that the histories that we've been told, the narratives that we've been fed, might not be accurate, nor complete, nor telling the whole story. And so there's enough evidence beginning to emerge, both in the archaeological and forbidden archaeology space, as well as I think the collective memory is another repository of evidence to support also the deeper reality and the deeper hidden histories that are now, because of the time of apocalypse, of revelation that we're actually navigating openly, these truths are coming forward. And there is also some efforts to suppress these truths because they're very inconvenient to some of the other competing narratives that have benefited from suppressing these truths. So as we navigate that this evening, we're really grateful to be joined by our guest, none other than Baba Wanique Shabazz. And with that, I want to first introduce our segment, just because as having him here, I think it's going to be helpful that he's part of this tune-up, as he's very familiar with these codes, and so he'll deeply appreciate of sort of the tracking of them, as we've been doing with the harmonic factor. In fact, he has been a significant part of the initiation of that effort, this effort that continues to this day. So with all that in mind, let's go ahead and get to it. Thank you for tuning in to the Galactic Spin Podcast. In Lakesh, Baba Wanique, are you there? Are you able to hear us? Can you hear us? I think we have you, but the image is frozen.
Yes, I can hear you well, if you can hear me.
Yep, we hear you there. Just had a little bit of freezing on the computer there, but now we hear you. It looks great. Are we delayed on your end?
I'm not sure. I'm hearing you, I imagine, in real time. I'm not sure what the delay would be, because I only have one source of you coming through, and I'm hearing you fine.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Consider this our sound check.
The camera can't be turned off once it's turned on. I can't turn the camera on.
No, the camera cannot be turned off, unfortunately. Though, yeah, I mean, we see you perfectly fine on the screen. Certainly let us know if you need that to shift. We're happy to accommodate. But certainly welcome to the Galactic Spin podcast. Firstly, it's truly an honor to have you in this space, as we've known each other quite a long time and have seen each other through many iterations of sharing this time science with people.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for being part of this continuum of amplifying this knowledge on the planet.
Oh, yes, indeed. This is my divine honor. It's a mutual appreciation there.
Right on. And I know Ruben as well is on deck here. We were all together, I think, at this point about 5 years ago, last time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
In
Yeah,
like,
it's
in like
a
this.
real honor. In Lakesh, Brother Wanique, it's a real honor to have you on deck today for this conversation with so many layers to explore and so much wisdom to learn from you as a special witness of this entire unfolding of the cosmic histories on planet Earth. So such an honor to share this conversation with you on this prophetic day of all days and of all episodes. We are in this 19th episode, synchronizing with this Kin 218, the white planetary mirror. So much to speak about it. So it's a real honor to have you here today to learn from you.
Likewise.
And so we'll get right into it. A few years ago, you were part of launching with us what has become a version of the harmonic synchronometer time tool, basically the calendar. We call it synchronometer, of course, because it's really truly a measure of synchronicity. And it was inspired by the original synchronometer, that being the 13 moon calendar, as a new iteration of that, and also providing a couple of other fractal layers that aren't in other synchronometers at this time. But with that said, we want to go ahead and, as we do with every episode, and we wanted to have you as part of this one because you are a timekeeper yourself, so you would really appreciate the process that we like to take it through each episode. So thank you for being part of that. And so, as we like to introduce to folks, and we encourage people to go to theharmonicfactor.com. If they haven't already, go there and download a copy of this, because every episode we're tracking along with the synchronometer where we are in time, in this process of the evolving through time. We know where we are in space. However, without tools like this, we don't really know where we are in time, in terms of time being the universal factor of synchronization. So in light of that, we identify with the synchronometer. We're in NS 137, which we know is coded by Kin 19. As Ruben mentioned, that's one of the layers of 19 that we're excited to explore together with you. So just to say that we're in the blue rhythmic storm year, coded by Kin 19, the year bearer as such. And each year is laid out in the form of a planetary service wave spell, or 13 moons, 28 days each, for those who've been tracking with us would know, and that we are in the 8th moon, the moon of integrity, which also happens to be your tone, Baba Wanique. So having you also resonate with us in this moment is beautiful, because it's amplified by your origin tone, your destiny kin. So bringing that harmonization, bringing that integrity, quality into the frequency, into the conversation as well. Just identifying where we are in that sense, being in the galactic moon of integrity. And also looking at some of the fractal layers. I want to ask Ruben to go ahead and speak to this a little bit, but talk about the fractal layer here as well. As I mentioned, our synchronometer applies a couple of fractal layers.
Yes, thank you, brother, and thank you to Baba Wanique also to help us bring clarity to everything that we are going to share today, because there's so much to cover, and when we start to explore time through fractal layers, like in this case, the fractal layer is the layer of one kin equals one moon, and this layer of fractal amplitude in which each kin is 28 days, not 1 day, was really started to be followed on in 1997 with the second stage of the Telecton prophecy revelation called the 20 tablets of the law of times. And since then, it was established that every 13 months we complete 13 units on the Solkin. So basically every 260 months we complete 20 years, because there are 20 cycles of 13 months each in that period. So that fractality is the one that we keep tracking, and according to that fractal count, we are now navigating the 13-month planetary service waybill of the human. And that was actually the first episode of this podcast was on Kin 92, which is the yellow magnetic human. So for us was another confirmation that those fractal layers are becoming more clear for us too, because there is a nested quality in which these 13 days can be nested in a larger hologram of 13 moons, and that larger hologram of 13 moons is nested within a 13-year or 13 solar ring cycle, and that 13 solar ring is nested within a 52 array, 52-year array, which is the fractal yardstick of the Mayan time science. So this is basically the way that we have been interpreting, and right now, according to this count, this entire galactic moon is coded by Kin 99, the blue galactic storm. So this is a cycle. If we go to the next slide, to the cover of this moon, this 8th moon is special for two reasons. Well, the resonance with the energy of the entire year, which is the year of the blue rhythmic storm, but in this case it's the blue galactic storm. So we have double storm quality, double opportunity for transformation. And in this case, because it's the galactic tone instead of the rhythmic, is an opportunity to really the tone of integrity is about harmonizing and modeling integrity. And in times like the times that we are living, integrity refers to the quality of being whole. So it's really an opportunity to see ourselves in the mirror and see all parts of that human theme that is the entire year as an opportunity to transform the shadows into light, to really transmute all that energy that is brewing in humanity and is bringing so much transformation this year, and use it for the good, use it for the evolution of the planet, and that's what this 8th moon is calling us to do. And also an interesting layer is that on the last day of this 8th moon, we reach the golden section of the year, which is in this graphic, this infographic, we show the 13 moons as part of a circle, which in reality is a spiral. But when we see the spiral movement, let's say that point where the line, green line, divides the blue and the red, that is the golden section of the year. It will be the start, the end of this moon and the start of the 9th moon of the year. And we will be basically 5 months away from closing the year. So this is a harmonic passage that we pay special attention, and we have been emphasizing, because these are new ways of relating to the harmony embedded in that 13 unit structure of the waybill, that we can really identify points of harmonic resonance and tune into those days to check the quality of the significance of the cycles that we are transiting. Remember that next moon, Kin 100 is the first golden section of the Solkin matrix, which is comprised of 260, so 100 and 160 corresponds to 1/5 and 1/8 of the entire 260-day hologram. So everything is starting to under this lens, this fractal lens, everything starts to really click and become much more beautiful, much more charged with synchronicity and magic. And the fact that this entire year is called the new Sirius cycle 1.37, and the golden angle is 137 degrees. So basically, our Earth, our planet, will complete one, according to the Mayan time science, 1/8 of the, or one golden section of the year, one period of 8 months that corresponds to the entire golden section that we see here in red. So this is really an opportunity to tune in, to really focus our attention in harmony, in the integrity of the system, and allow this to transform our minds and our hearts and enter into resonance with a larger hologram that is pulsing us. That is this matrix of life, these two cycles of 260 days and 365 days, or 364 plus 1 days, that gives us that ability to really pace our biology with the rhythms of the galaxy, the rhythms of the sun, and the rhythms of the moon. And if you want to just share with us, brother, the coordinates of this moon.
Sure. I mean, as we can see here, we're in the galactic moon of integrity. As we mentioned, we're on day 4 of the moon, also referred to as Kali 4 or Kali Plasma 4, for the energy of the day. Relates also to the sacral chakra. And when we track each of the 7 days, we can appreciate the spiral pattern from the crown to the heart, tracking each of the 7 days. So all of our episodes happen to align with the Kali day of the current year, as we prepare for the golden intersection of timelines, which will also occur beginning on Kali Day, if I'm not mistaken. I think October 14th, 2025 is a Kali Day as well. So as we've been keeping this time science, just in terms of observing this forthcoming golden intersection, I can appreciate what you're pointing out in this galactic moon, as we indicate there with the phi symbol on day 28 of the galactic moon. It indicates that is the phi ratio point, or the golden proportion of the 13 moon year. And so we can see that that's also a counterpart to the same phi ratio observation that we make in the overtone moon on day 28. And those are companion golden proportions, if you will, when you lay it out over the 13 moon year. And so, yeah, that's very good to point out to folks, as you mentioned, because the purpose of amplifying these fractal layers or illuminating them is to make conscious the hidden harmony that's woven throughout all of these timekeeping systems. And that has been really the exercise of the harmonic factor really since 2017, is to begin to plot and track and observe the synchronization pattern that's already built in, evidently, to all of the matrices or the calendar systems and the mathematics that govern these things. So that's what we try to help illuminate here by making these things conscious. So we move into then also another display of the 1328 in a radial form, just to illustrate that this is a radial time science. It's not a linear time science in that regard. It's a radial nature. And we can see that array for the 1328, which really relates to our fertility cycles in the human fertility frequency. And then that couples or synchronizes with the synchronic order, the cyclic order synchronizing with the synchronic order of 1320, which we can identify there with the outline in green, the current wave spell that we're navigating. So just making those things conscious as we're tracking these patterns again and keeping the beat frequency of it, so to speak. And I'll just say that, and Wanique will appreciate this, that we just entered the Green Castle, the central castle of destiny, and that we're now in that fifth 52-day cycle, the final 52-day cycle of Tzolk'in number 53 since the beginning of the new time. And so that's what you can see, and folks tracking this with us will see in the graphics there, highlighting that 52, highlighting the 5 castles, obviously, but just noting that this first wave spell that we're still in, and that being day 10 as of today, that we're in that first 10 days of this 52-day castle. It's a powerful window because we're coming to completion with the current Tzolk'in cycle or gestation period. And gestation obviously implies a birth and question, what is being birthed. So we like to make that conscious. And another way of perceiving that is also, as Wanique would recognize, this Destiny Oracle board relative to another way that these castles are displayed, just to help people appreciate the component parts of the time science. Because you have a 1328 matrix that we look at as a 1328 calendar, if you will, but then you also have that synchronizing with this 260-day count, and that completes every 52 years. And that's why we show that 52 in the previous diagram I shared. Just to provide a quick synopsis for folks, this is our process of just sinking in, tuning up, so people can get really oriented, because there are many layers to this, obviously. And speaking of which, let's just continue with the layers. We kind of pare it down when you get into the wave spell cycle. And as I mentioned, we're on day 10 of this first wave spell that initiates the moon genesis at the beginning of this green castle of enchantment. And all of those terminologies are part of a new knowledge base that articulates essentially a way of describing ancient processes, we might say. It's like, and that's why today's episode is really titled Ancient Futures, because we want to begin to help people appreciate that when we look at different timelines, we're looking at orientation and trajectory as well. Some timelines may go in a linear fashion from point A to point B. Other timelines may go in a spiral fashion, whereas others may come from the future and go backwards. And so when we're talking about the different timelines in this case, we're looking at the intersection of them in our lifetimes, which is, I think, an interesting way to characterize this, that we all chose to be here on the planet at this time when these major timelines are intersecting and harmonizing, and in some cases neutralizing. Let's observe that as well. There are things that are being neutralized also as a result of this. And this particular wave spell is important because it also speaks to the occultation of the number 13. It speaks to the occultation of the divine feminine frequency in the matter at hand, if you will. And that being one of the also long oppressive elements of the narrative that's been promoted generally and dominated the narrative, so to speak, though that is, again, among the things being restored and remembered in a good way, in a very important way. And so we highlight today, as you can see, Kin 218, which is day 10 of this wave spell, is highlighted there. And this bears deep, deep, deep significance and bearing on this conversation, which is why I think having you, Brother Wanique, here today is no coincidence, and that everything would align and arrange for us to actually be here to commemorate today's signature for specific reasons, because it does resonate with the discovery, so-called, the recovery of none other than the tomb of Pacal. And I think that's a very significant marker right now, and we know that we're 102 Tzolk'ins as of today since that discovery. So making that conscious is very significant in the course of our research and the course of our remembrance here together, because I know that space holds particular significance for you as a human being, and also as a time traveler and a timekeeper in your own right. So I know I could read your extensive bio, which I did post for people to refer to in the show description. So I invite people to read the extensive bio. But I also think energetically, I'd love to just speak with you and to you as we have this conversation, as it relates to prophecy, for example, prophecy as well as fulfillment of our kuleana, our purpose, our roles. When we talk about our galactic signatures, for example, we know you define that as your galactic purpose signature, your GPS. And so with that frame, then how you show up as a galactic world-bridger and what that actually means, because it has layers of meaning. And I think that there's some depth of meaning also that relates specifically to the discovery of Pacal's tomb in Palenque and the Temple of Inscriptions, and also some of the frequency of who you are, who you are as an embodiment, who you are as a name and a tone and a vibration, and the role that you specifically serve. And I know I'd like to touch in maybe a little bit for characterization about how you and I first met, because you are a journalist, and I met you in that capacity first. And you interviewed me, and we were in Washington, D.C. at the time. I mean, look what a vortex that is right now on the planet of all places. And you and I met on the National Mall on the day out of time in what was the year 2003. And that was a very significant encounter to have met you at that moment. And I know we had a conversation. I think we met, and you mentioned that you were with the radio station WRFG out of Atlanta, Georgia. Shout out to 89.3 FM. And, that you were there on assignment to anchor and work with other kin who had been gathered there to observe the day out of time, of all things. And so that's how we met. And I'd like to just maybe start there as we kind of have this exploration together. But thank you again for being here with us. And please excuse our informal way of hosting you. But I certainly appreciate your presence being here with us now.
Mm-hmm. Well, in Lakesh, Lakin, and of course, I don't know what that formality would be because, all those barriers of formality are being broken and dismantled. For us to be really, truly in sync, we have to be out of formalization, normalization. And with that being stated, I want to thank you and, of course, Brother Ruben for the invite. It's an honor to be a part of this most auspicious platform. And I just say, that all the decoding that happened prior to me actually presenting or even responding to some of the acknowledgments that you provided, and also the wisdom that you also provide in the science of the Olmec Nubun cosmology, which has been highly misnomered, and not saying that to be disparaging to the Mayan, Aztec, and the Zapotek civilizations. But as you stated or iterated earlier, that a lot is being uncovered and being recovered, more so than just being discovered, about the presence of the ancient ancestors of all those that I mentioned, and of course much more of the Olmec's navigation on this planet, and particularly in the regions that we call Turtle Island, South America, Central America, and the like. And evidence of that, and I heard you say the word evidence a few times there, because evidence is what we always require in any investigation, any research. The best thing is to have forensics to be able to maintain a sense of clarity as to when you start speaking to and manifesting the science that comes with all which was displayed leading up to this moment before I began to even respond. But I, think about the level of synchronicities that happen, which allows for our navigation and our life path to be very much in sync with the dynamics of what we come to express and what we come to fulfill on this plane. You mentioned that in the form of the GPS as what I introduced to the sphere. After, of course, having that uncovery with the Foundation for the Long Time and working with one of the purveyors of the science, the Mayan science, as it were, Jose Arguelles, also known as Ruben Votan. And I think about that from the standpoint of what it means for us to be able to really understand all the codes, all the synchronic order of that which was being provided by you and Brother Ruben, telling us what is really happening on a cosmic level, where we are somewhat inundated with the mundane and the matrix and the levels of disparities surrounding the Gregorian calendar, where it's wrapped up in a series of looping of the fallacies of how one navigates time. So when I say that, I was thinking about the synchronicities when I was listening and absorbing all the energy that you were providing, and realized that, that I'm in this cycle. We talk about cycles. And we talk about earth cycles, because, when you're in your earth cycles, you're traveling and you're navigating and you're doing the completion of cycles, one solar return to the other. And when you are understanding the dynamics and the dialectics of that, you begin to start saying, well, how does it move into the space that you're now in to justify your existence, to qualify your existence? And we can look about and see that a lot of those entities that we call fellow humans or fellow navigators of this dimension, we come to realize that everyone incarnated as such. No one gets to this dimension without becoming, if you will, initiated into their incarnation as a kin, or I like to call it kin incarnation. And understanding the kinetics of life and understanding the kinesiology of one's tactile physical representation, it is important to note that there's so much involved in that. And the reason why I say that is because I correlated to, in this particular cycle, which would be the 64th cycle of my solar return, and how that's moved into what I represented when I came into that 64th cycle as the 64 codons that represent the DNA particles and the chromosomes that demonstrate my existence in terms of a physiological being that has 46 chromosomes. In that, I entered into my 46 kin in my Earth family on this solar return. And that 46 kin, as you well would know, I'm sure Brother Ruben knows, that the 46 kin is the resident world-bridger. That resident world-bridger states in an affirmation, an affirmative way sounds better, in the affirmative way of understanding what the instructions are for this particular cycle. And the instructions in this case, as a resident world-bridger, to channel in order to equalize. Inspiring opportunity to seal the store of death, as the archetype is, or the solar seal represents as the world bridger. But it's also being vibrationally in tune by the resonant tone of attunement, and is guided by the power of endlessness, which in that synchronicity is the inversion of where we are today in the planetary world-bridger. As we're in the planetary mirror, guided by the world-bridger. So this pattern that is available to us is that it takes us out of the matrix, mundanity of the matrix, that all the information that's coming based on the doom and gloom of the matrix decimation of the empire. We can be able to have some sense of harmony, because you were speaking about the convergence as you talk about this connection of everything happening, and that's always in a spiral-like form in terms of the DNA or the chromosomes that function to make us have a whole system, a whole existence. So I think that, taking it from that energy of the highest vibration that you and Brother Ruben has entered us into, is to bring it more down to the practical, and not saying that we should not be there, because that's important, because that's the codes are so essentially important, because it gives us a sense of really understanding the purpose that we are existing. The purpose that we existing is, in fact, as the word implies, the pure possession of our life path.
Mm-hmm.
That pure possession, that purpose, gives us the indicators of what is happening to us as we navigate, and all the I'll say inspiring. I'll say all the inspiration based on where I am in this open port to unity as the opportunity is, and all the encounters and all the experiences that we have, and those that we come into connection with from a mundane level, or maybe from a social level, or maybe from a psychosocial, psychosexual level, are adding to the dynamics of what it is for us to really step up and get back in accord with those powerful, powerful metrics that you and our brother entered us into and inviting me. And again, I can't say it enough that how I'm honored to be here, to be a part of this vibrational standpoint of this powerful platform you have. And when you came and asked me to be a part of it, and we were looking at, the availability and whether it'll be something that could really develop and unfold and tangibilize within the context of time. We're here, notwithstanding what it took to get us here, or what path or journey we were on to get us to this point, where you get a retrospect and a recall of the time that you and I connected on the lawn of that space that is really truly crumbling before our very eyes and ears. All the things that we hear being activated is right on schedule, as it were, to be able to have all of us take note of who we are and what our purpose is on this planet, and what is going to happen to regain or reclaim the rightful space of our incarnation. As I talk about that from the standpoint of coming into a peaceful, harmonic vibration in terms of having an appreciation, which means to increase in value of being present. That appreciation is really going back to who were the entities, or the pair of entities, or as it were, the parents, the power entity that brought us into this space, who came together through an interlocking or intersection of their energies to make us really have an appreciation for their power of creation. And that power of creation comes from the sensational interactions of that which we call love, which is, of course, the first inversion or the transcribing of the word evolve, L-O-V or E-V-O-L, as we go into the evolution of sorts and senses. So I like the idea that I'm sitting in this space and time, and I can tell you some stories about how I got to this very space that I'm now in, to be sitting here in a comfort zone, to be able to have this discourse or this dissemination of information with the likes of yourself, of Mikuak as a solar world-bridger. The intention that you have is always about the purpose, right? Not what is the purpose, because that's the magnetic, right? But how do I activate my purpose? How do I make that purpose known in a way that you can bridge the world of your existence? And I don't know, that brings me to really truly having an appreciation for the encounters that come with the authenticity of this science, which doesn't just lie with me and with you, but others who actually really truly personifies prophecy and the perfectness of this work, and the one that really truly can help to decode where we are, so we can have the essentiality of the declaration of our independence to become the return to the science that brings us back into our native indigenous status here in the Americas and wherever else we may find ourselves.
Absolutely. So I'd love to get into some of that. In fact, I know that's one of the inspirations in having you on this episode. The timing worked out perfectly that we could do that today. As we get into that, let's reflect also on the signature of today. As you mentioned previously, your signature in the current incarnation, or your current kin carnation, we'll say. I love that. That's quotable. I put that in the chat as well. And shout out to folks in the live chat. Delia, we see you there, as well as our brother Jason. Kwame Sunhorse is tapped in as well for the conversation tonight, and some others. So we give thanks for all of you there in Lakesh. And so, Ruben, would you do us the honors of reciting today's planetary mirror affirmation?
Yes, of course, and actually for me it's a special day because this is the incarnation or my incarnation in 260 days would be October 28th on the Gregorian calendar, which is my Gregorian birthday. So I will be informed by this energy of the white planetary mirror in 260 days from today. So,
and just real quick, that's an important synchronicity because you're currently 52. Let's be very clear.
Yes.
So you are actually in your solar galactic return this year.
And full circle. It's full circle. It's come full circle.
Coming full circle. So, and to know that you're going to be in this kin currently on your Syrian rebirth next year on your 53rd birthday. That's a powerful synchronicity.
It's powerful, and everything that Wanique just shared, so synchronistic. Also, we will go deeper into that, but let's dive first into the affirmation meditation for this day, and while we are still in that energy here in the East Coast or the Eastern time. So, Kim 218 White Planetary Mirror. I perfect in order to reflect. Producing order, I seal the matrix of endlessness with the planetary tone of manifestation. I am guided by the power of death. I am a galactic activation portal. Enter me.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yes. This is such a powerful energy because, as we were mentioning, well, it's the connecting link or the point of reference in time that we are having today for this archaeological discovery that brought us the codes of the new time. And these codes are galactic in nature, so having a Galactic World-Bridger and this galactic moon. Speaking about galactic culture and galactic knowledge is
on the galactic spin.
On the galactic spin.
Yeah.
So it's
infinity.
It's really
so much infinity.
Yeah.
Yes, many spirals like the galaxy.
Many
spirals within the spirals, and having that energy, coding that discovery. And also, as we reach these 26,520 days, which those numbers are also frequencies that are informing us, we are really closing a hologram of 104 Solkins, which is the conclusion of 2 cycles of 52 Solkins each. Let's keep in mind that we are speaking about fractal time. So when we feel these holographic containers of time of 52 units, it doesn't matter if it's days or weeks or heptads or moons or years, we feel, or Solkins in this case, we are feeling like or completing holographic cycles that contain an information encoded within them. So the fact that we are closing these 104 cycles on July 15, 2026, right before entering the out of time, and knowing that today is also important in terms of the archaeological discovery took place on King 218, but that was the day that the entrance to the tunnel of this archaeological site was found, this burial place. But it was only until King 123, which is the year of time, that we are going to that we saw what happened or who was inside that crypt or that subterranean chamber, and that was this Mayan king Pacal Votan. So I would like to Wanique to elaborate a little bit more about the connection of these ancient figures and the Mayan knowledge with the Olmecs and all the roots of this wisdom and this star knowledge.
Are you asking for me to respond to that, Brother Ruben?
Yeah, I think he was inviting you to speak to that.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly. And
Yeah.
just to frame it kind of with some of the visuals we have here as well. This is just to help accompany that conversation.
Oh, so am I able to see those visuals or no?
I don't know how you see. Are you able to see on your screen? You should be able to see what we see on the screen. Or
yeah, all I see is the chat. I see where it actually it's a black screen and it has live. But I don't see anything else. Is it that either we clicking on or something?
No. Actually,
Share screen or something.
There's basically some presentation slides on screen as we see it. But depending upon I'm not sure how you're actually seeing it from your system there. So, Ruben, what do you see? Which because you're both looking at the
screen. I'm seeing the Olmec head with the title of this episode, Ancient Futures Reclaiming Time, Memory, and Destiny.
Right. So where do you see that on your backstage, though? Because you all have a similar backstage. So is that just on the main screen?
I see on main screen, and we are the three of us is below.
Right. That's the one we're looking at. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know, Wanique. Do you see the visual with the three of us below, kind of a movie screen?
No, I see nothing now. Not even my visual is gone. I don't even see myself anymore.
For
some reason, that's been removed. All I see is a black screen.
Okay, interesting.
And the live indicator. And on the left, it shows when one can enter or leave. It says when Ruben left and joined, or something to that effect.
Right. So I'm being told backstage you may need to click on it to join it or to be able to view it. I'm not sure.
Click on what?
Maybe click on the black screen. I'm honestly not sure.
I'm clicking on it now. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm clicking on it. Nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening.
In fact, I don't even see myself now for some reason.
Okay. Well, you're still in here. Let me pull you into a different view just to see if you see something different at this point. Do you see a different view backstage now?
No, I do not. I don't see anything except a black screen. Even my screen is black, but I don't see myself anymore.
Okay.
Oh, you don't see yourself? Oh.
No, I was seeing myself at first, and now I don't even see that. Now it's just a black. Both of the screens are black. So,
okay.
So I went to a black hole, so it's probably appropriate too for this conversation.
Perhaps
the Galactic Center.
It is the Galactic Center. That's true.
Absolutely. So I'm not
maybe
sure.
Technically, yeah. Okay, I see somebody's joining in to check help in the back, some tech support perhaps. But maybe one thing I'd recommend is you log out and log back in if that's possible, Baba Wanique, just to see if that
logging out is exit.
Exit, right? Exit that and go ahead and we'll pull it to a different screen for the sake of the live and we'll wait for you to join us backstage.
I'll be back. Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll navigate that, take it as it comes. Our tech support is backstage as well, doing their best to assist. So we appreciate that. We'll welcome Wanique back momentarily as he's able to join back in. It looks like he's jumping back in. Let's see if this works. Thank you, everybody. Navigating these tech opportunities together. All right, is that any better, Wanique?
The technosphere. I can see myself again, but I don't see anything other than that. All I have is a black screen with the middle of the center of that black screen is the live indicator or the recording indicator. but I don't have
Oh,
any other visual. And then on the left, I see Shell making a statement
Okay, yeah, you see the supporter in the
the
background.
chat, the
Yeah, in the
internal
chat.
chat.
Okay, that's good. You see the
Yeah.
chat. All right. Well, I tell you what.
hmm.
I don't know that
We,
it necessarily matters. We can just carry on the conversation regardless of
yeah,
these visuals. They're helpful, but at the same time,
yeah.
we'll work those in at some other point. But let's carry on with the conversation, just because I'd love to tap in and get some perspective from you, as Wanique, rather as Ruben was inviting, just given the synchronization, the resonant layer of today being Kin 218, the recovery of the tomb of Pacal. Let's speak to the fact, though, that, and this again is maybe new for some people,
Hmm.
the Maya, among whom obviously Pacal is a king and sage, also considered in some circles as a time traveler, um, was largely, I guess, to some degree, the orientation or information was sourced from the Olmec or Nubun, as you mentioned earlier, that precede the Maya. So that's a new layer of recovery of memory, for example. But talk to us a little bit about that, because I think that is something, again, coming to the surface at this time of revelation and clarification.
Okay, so to put it in perspective, because of course, my many years of study allowed me and afford me to be able to have a sense of that, particularly my initial studies, of course, with Jose Arguez, as I mentioned earlier, Ruben Votan, who had his own mission of attempting to bring forth the wisdom of the closing of the cycle. He gave his rendition and version of it, and it was very much, voluminous, in terms of the information that he provided. He also penned a lot of literature, of course, the Mayan factor and surface of the Zabur, and a whole array of time codes that he was able to, in his own sense of self, provide. As I developed and moved through that, being one of the only million dominant ones that was up close and personal with him at that time, because I was the encounter was brought forth in my interest in the study of time science. And at that time, I was also very much affiliated with Dr. Jude Puku, who was here in Atlanta during, I think, was the Olympics. But it also was, I believe, the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, I believe. And Jose and Lordine Arguez, his then wife, were traveling throughout cities, and they made a stop in this city, and it just so happens that we got wind of that, and we made ourselves present for that presentation that he made, that he was introducing the telectonon and the time codes and the dream spell. And it was fascinating to me, because I always had this affinity with the level of what time represented and how time functioned and what it meant for to understand the dynamics of truly I master equality, of the movement of that which is purported to be a clock face with some hands on it in this face to try to tell you how to navigate, so kind of difficult, to navigate with hands in your face, um, even to the point that it was the deformity of the hands, because one was the short hand, the little hand they called it, and the other was the big hand, right? And this is what we were taught, to calculate how to tell time. And for some reason, I always thought there was something about that was so. Um, I don't know if it was incendiary, because it really brought about some real questions of discovery to determine that, okay, here we have a deformity of the short hand and the big hand and on the face, that is actually perpetually moving, what they call in seconds and minutes, and of course culminating to hours. And then there was this addition to it, was called a second hand, which is really, if you listen to it, I feel it's a third hand, right? Because there's only two hands on it, right? So this level of deception and Jedi mind trick for the introduction of time, false time, fallacious time. The imagination of what time would be if you gauge it by some kind of gadget or apparatus on the wall or on your wrist or anywhere else that you may carry it, even if you carry it as a TikTok in your hand or in your pocket, which is used to hypnotize, as you well know. The determinant factors of what was brought forth in terms of the research and a lot of information that was being brought forth at the time by Jose Willis, again, put me in a space of more curiosity and interest in what I've been studying over the many years about, the understanding and the comprehension of time. My previous study to that was the theology of time by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and where he was speaking about the annals of things historically in terms of how things culminate and how things even collapse, in calamity as we see now happening, and how that was going to be the dictates of the messenger or the message that was being provided by him as he was deemed the messenger of Allah, right? The messenger of that deity called, in that sense, Allah. My studies at that time also brought me into understanding that was speaking about the embodiment of the actual movement of the physical representation of the real life force, which was who we represent, if you call it Allah, which means back to what I was talking about in terms of appendages or whatever, Allah as an arm, leg, arm, and head. And that gave the depiction of that science. So within that whole mind stream, there was a sense of understanding, overstanding, and even understanding that there was more to be studied and more to be, if you will, deciphered when we talk about the historical context of the ancient Olmec presence, which represented the native presence of that which was the melanin dominance of those of us who are Black, who actually have our start here in the Americas. So that led me to an encounter with another dynamic brother by the name of King Esnad, who was himself an inversion of what we talk about today in terms of the guide and me being the guide for the day, him being that particular incarnation or that particular incarnating galactic kid soul as the mirror, began to provide his own research and concrete study and his own prophetic presence about this Olmec science and his lineage to that. And we began to embark upon a journey where I was actually interacting and interviewing and bringing more light to the Olmec presence, where there were others who were actually purporting to bring that science into existence, which was the science that was brought forth by Professor Ivan Van Sertima when he talks about they came before Columbus. That level of dissertation relative to the literary provisions by Professor Ivan Van Sertima gave a maintenance that there was a way that we got here through a sojourn or through a migration from a different place now, as we know, more popular as Africa. These information and science that brought forth the contradictions in that, or the challenge to that, was that the level of timelines and time frame preceded way before any incarnation of us being in this planet on this particular realm based on the Ma'afa or the slave trade. So the level of information that was coming from King El Rey was really truly authenticated because he is a prolific researcher, and he has written many scrolls and information surrounding his own very presence and significance to this science. And he has demonstrated that in large part by the proof of evidence, as you talked about earlier, of the presence of the native tribes or the Native Americans or the indigenous to this dimension or to this terrain that we now call the Americas. So when we talk about study and research, we talk about being able to have a substantiation of that which has been given to us as a fallacy or as an illusion or as a big switch. Not so much to deceive us to the degree that it's saying that there's no significance to the Mayan or the Maya. But as we well know, those of us who study etymology and understand the word sound or what the definition of things are, we know that the Maya says illusion. And the Maya represents and demonstrates the illusion of what we think we're now getting based on who was the true ascendants of all the civilizations of the Americas. And it's coming out, and you can see now, based on the series that myself and on my program that you know as well. And you said, I'm a journalist, but I do a program called Map Time Jazz, and we do a series. We're doing a series of who am I and who are we and what is our origins and are we genetically connected to the land here, or are we from some other land mass or from the continent of Africa? And the bloodlines of the DNA prove different in a lot of cases in terms of when you do the sequence and the DNA sequence, and you find that our presence, melanin dominant presence, the black natives of this particular landmass did not all derive or arrive here from a cross-Atlantic slave trade and do a subjugation of our civilized world of being in the continent of Africa and brought here to slave and toil on the plantations of this particular landmass or this terrain. This particular unfolding or this delivery of the information is clear based on the thousands and thousands of years of unearthing of the presence of the Shi clan and the black dynasties and the black nobility. And I dare say, I would also invite you to at one point invite our brother to talk more about this in more depth, about the actualization of the proof of who we are and what our presence has been in the Americans fighting as the Seminoles and the Native Americans relative to the 5 civilized tribes that was created, to be able to navigate this terrain up against that which was the colonizers and those who were the so-called pirates, who actually took us and took hold and had the fights, the great fights in Seminole, Florida, and the great battles that are proven to show that the Native Americans, not so much the American Indian, but the Native Americans to this landmass has always been those of us of melanin who darker than blue, who truly have the indicators of the unearthing of the mounds and unearthing of the Olmec, the crowns and the helmet that we see displaying on my apparel here, because we've been really truly displaced to make that move to the likes of Charles Darwin and others who tried to implement a white supremacist doctrine on this landmass, on the world, to make it appear that in order for us to justify our existence, that we had to be identified with another part of the planet, as opposed to understanding that we were on this part of the planet way before, long before any knowledge of existence in the continent of Africa. And the reason why there's a lot of pushback about that, because Pan-Africanism, that's the mainstay of the conversation and communication. And African scholars, great intended scholars that we now revere, we are mindful and being careful of trying to contradict the research that they brought forth and saying that we're African, we're all from Africa, Africa is a motherland. When here, the science of this land, the mother, Otla, is the motherland. The first motherland was on the shores of the Americas, where everything was spelled out. They're finding in excess of, I want you to count these, 250,000 pyramid structures on this landmass in the North and South and Central Americas that far exceed the pyramids that you will find on the continent of Africa. Far exceeds the magnificence, the monumental magnificence of the Pyramid of Giza, the pyramids of Giza. So if we have enough strength and enough discipline, enough harmony, enough compassion to really have a conversation about the truth of what can be defined, you don't get into this tug of war about, well, who's better mine, or who's better, who's different, who's more relevant, who's more important. But the truth will be that the false African narrative was imposed upon the world, and it was carried out by well-meaning, I, I would say, well-meaning scholars who only got their knowledge and information from that which was rooted in the narrative that we all came from Africa.
So let's talk about that a little bit then, because obviously that perspective, as you mentioned, because there are academic precedents from the communities, Black American communities, scholarly and African scholars as well, that I think have also asserted or expounded upon the out of Africa theories, right? That's been kind of, as you say, the narrative, the dominant narrative among scholars from the Black community up to, say, the past, I don't know, 30 years or maybe, I don't know, less.
That's right.
Thereabout. And we're in the time of, again, revelation. I'm wondering, in fact, though, the seeding of such a narrative it must have been initiated by somebody. And I'm wondering, to whose benefit does that diversion send our intellectuals in sort of a direction that they wrestle with this abstraction, this idea that's been proposed? Who proposes that, first of all, I'm wondering, and to what benefit, and why are they trying to obfuscate the fact or the potential, let's just say, that the origin story could include origins from North America, South America, like you're saying? And perhaps even this idea of them being multiple cradles of civilization, not just one that's tied to a certain narrative. It's just a very interesting thing, because I don't know that anybody who's the victor of a conflict or the war on consciousness, for example, they're writing the narrative that best suits them ultimately. So, here we are now, pretty deep into 150 years worth of, I would say, weaponization of the intellect, weaponization of academies and things like this, where these historical narratives have been presented and concretized in our thinking, such as the Darwin's perspective of evolution, for example, being that dominant sort of perspective enforced through the scholastic systems and things like that. Anyway, I just posit that to say it's important that we do unpack this. You said, who's going to have the compassion or the capacity to host such a conversation? And I realize that so many of our identities and therefore egos are attached to certain narratives. And part of this evolutionary process is actually dissolving all of that stuff. As world-bridgers, we know that quite well, because there has to be a death to the ego. There has to be a death to whom you thought you were, or maybe who it was inferred that you are. And all of those false narratives have to be released at some point in our individual and collective initiation. So it seems we're going through now this collective window especially. So a lot of these narratives that have been enforced or contained, or made solid in a sense, all that stuff is subject to being dissolved right now. So I find it fascinating that we are finding concurrent evidence to support these realities. I would be very excited to have Chief on at some future point. Yeah, when we have King Etsnab on, being that he is that mirror, as you said, and holding that space. So in due time, hopefully we can have him in the conversation, and he can share with us, a method for his research, for example, because I think, again, identifying the primary sources in some cases and things like this that go to further substantiate some of the basis of fact, that's otherwise been denied because it's inconvenient to actually acknowledge this.
Oh, yeah.
So many, again, the identities are wrapped up in that. So,
yeah, I think to say the least, inconvenience is,
right.
Because one of the things that happens when you're rooted in a story that allows for the displacement of your mindset of being, if you will, settled into a space that you have roots in and that you have the inheritance of. then you can easily see why there has to be a major congruence of moving your level of consciousness away from the claim of where you are to somewhere else.
That
To
is
make you,
sophisticated. I just want to say how sophisticated, what a scheme that is.
oh yeah,
To
it's
actually
major.
have deployed a scheme to actually cause the entire world to accept sort of a rewritten approach that is
No,
obviously
you say sort of. No, this is a well
well
written. It's not
well
sort
well,
of.
well
It
you know
is scripted.
yeah
It's so tight in the script that it's difficult for one to even grasp the notion
it's sophisticated, yeah.
that it was very sophisticated in the sense that it was so much that we can sit here and have a tug of war about the facts around locations and deities and what is representative in terms of the antiquity of things that happen and do a correlation. And that's, yes, you will do well and you'll be served well by having King El Rey on, because he has a power of navigating and truly elucidating the information as well as any scholar.
Yes.
And in the program that we've been doing, the series that we have on, we have been asking for and challenging others to come forth and if you will, debate the facts that we are speaking to, so
Right.
we can be able to have a sense of coming to reckon. Not that we want to have an antagonistic relationship with ourselves relative to those who are in Africa.
Yeah.
But there are, very much substantial evidence of that being a space where it's heavily populated and heavily occupied. But but then back to your point, in the way that you responded, you said, "Wow, that's a whole lot to do, and who would benefit from that?" Well, the notion of white supremacy benefits.
Right.
The white supremacy having a land that they can now claim to be their own, or what they have colonized, to give the impression that in their 7% in the global way of their population, 7% of the population of melanated sensitiveness, a way to, if you will, co-opt and to deceive, to believe that everything that happened from somewhere else. So therefore, those of us who have a affinity and have an indigeneity to the landmass of where we live, you get to see these very small factors. The factors are as such. Why would you have to drag or go and kidnap or go and confiscate or capture human beings from all across the planet or water when you state that in this particular landmass there was already those who occupied it called the American Indians, who by all intents and purposes knows this land better than anyone. If they are the original inhabitants of the land, they know the land better than anyone. So when you talk about enslaving one, why would not you enslave those who knew the land, who worked the land, who lived the land, who actually occupied the land, who are, if you will, the curators of the landmass? Why is that not part of the full narrative of the slave trade? Why is the slave trade speaking to the Africans being dragged over here from any part of the continent, any country over there, and brought here to work a landmass that they are not indigenous to, or not, if you will, familiar to? Now, mind you, of course, we have semblances of that. I'm not saying that, I'm not arguing or not even maintaining that there was not semblances of those who were actually kidnapped and brought over. I'm not saying that. That's not what my maintenance is. The maintenance of understanding the origins of that which is here already, who was enslaved because they were already inhabitants and occupants of the land. So they enslaved who were already here, not that they had to go get them and bring them here. And that's where we get the freedmen from. Why do you think, and this is the question that all people should ask who are very much, astute in understanding ownership, land ownership, because of course, many of the Pan-Africans' battle cry is free land. What? by any means necessary. How is it, I may ask, and maybe it's maybe even rhetorical, maybe even you can maybe help me in terms of your own observations. How is it that so many of those Black families who are here own so much land, have so much land? You got families, you talking about, you want to get a familiar one I want to point out, Nat Turner. The Turner family owns acres and acres, hundreds of acres of land. Where did they get that land from? Did they inherit it from their slave master? Or was that part of the 40 acres and a mule that was never fulfilled and never gave, any credits to that particular so-called, dispensation or distribution of land? How is it that so many of our Black families, and what I'm saying, using the term because it's Nubian families and Olmec families, I want to say, how is it that they own so much land that goes back generations? And they were tricked out of their land. Their lands were stolen. They were burnt out of their lands. The Rosewoods and the Black Wall Streets that we talk about in terms of how did they come to own so much land? And I'm talking about post-Reconstruction. Because that level of cognitive dissonance that you realize that, wait a minute, that's true, because anybody would tell you, and then the conversation usually are being had by those who are more native to this landmass, the southern landmasses. The conversation that they always have, always being unheralded or heralded, is the conversation about their family ancestors penning down oral history that they are native. Their ancestors were native Choctaw, those Chickasaw, Washita. They talked about the fact that that they had Indian in their family, if you will, because because they heard about it. Most of them was passed down through oral history, oral dissemination of that information. But there are those who will say that you get African ancestry, you go and you do these genealogical tests to try to prove that you're not from here, you're from somewhere else. And yes, you run up here, and then the Olmecs came over here, and they, originated from, a different area of Africa, and then they showed up here, as if nothing was being inhabited here. There's no conversation that you would have with anybody who's so-called American Indian about when the African came over. Or when they were trading, when they were doing an exchange for barters and goods and services, about the circumnavigation of the whole planet. Not that they were always coming as a journeyer or as a explorer. They were already present. And this way you can see where you have free men and people who were not enslaved, who were not operating from that. And then talk about the wars. Those battles that were taking place, and the battles about what we call now, after the battles, and then the idea around the Dawes Rolls. Are you familiar with the Dawes Rolls, Brother Mikuak?
I think you were illuminating me about that recently, in fact. But go ahead and share about what the Dawes Rolls is.
The Dawes Rolls was where you had the American Indians, and you had those who actually were native to that, who also were the Black natives, also in tangent with the American or Red Indians, were on this rolls where they began to see that they were going to be offered a certain amount of money as a sense of reparations, or given monies to the natives, or the American Indians and natives, and the Black natives who were on this Dawes Roll, DAWES for those who are doing references, DAWES rolls, ROLLS, where you could become an Indian for $5. They call them the $5 Indians, where white or European or Caucasians were paying $5 to be put on these rolls, so they can also become inheritors of some of this money that was being handed down by the government based on some of the things relative to treaties. And they call them the $5 Indians or the pretendians, the ones who say, I got 1/8 of Choctaw, I got 1/8, and all of a sudden you see all Europeans, Caucasians with feathers in their hair talking about they are 1/8 this and 1/9 that. And they're actually benefiting them. What they did summarily removed the black native or the black natives off the rolls. And you can look it up, I mean, at your fingertips. So therefore, at this point, anything I say, it's not for you to look at me and say, well, is that not true? Or are you making that up? All you got to do is do the research with your fingers, because everything is available to you, because we're in the overload, the deluge, the saturation of information. And all one has to do is just at their fingertips, do that. DAWES. If you can pull it up now, Mikuak, you can pull it up and we can have a conversation about what you see.
Well, right on. I won't do it while we're live right now, but I put it in the chat for people to check out though as well. So make sure you look at it.
So it's called the pretendians, and it's called that which was being the obfuscation of that which was the native, the Black American. And that's when you can see where they were being summarily removed, because the Red Indian, so-called American Indian, turned coat on the Black natives who were here first, who actually gave them because they looked to them as being the ones who were the original, the elders.
Yeah.
Not and not so that they were coming in and trying to become Indian, trying to want to become Indian, saying that I got Indian because I'm trying to be red or I'm trying to be that which I'm not. The Black natives were already situated and very much, established on this plane, on these planes. So I'm saying that is part of our research, is to understand what it is relative to bloodlines and what it is to DNA, and the DNA's tumble and sequence, and what is your blood type. That's the blood never lies. About where you find in the Americas and also in the Indies, or the West Indies they call it, where you find that the majority of those who are present in these landmass are usually O positive or the universal donor, versus those who are in different parts of other parts of the world, or the landmass or geographic landmass, where you have AAB and that kind of thing, Africans and that and the like, where the Native American, the Black American, as it were, has a very unique space and place in this particular landmass as the original natives and the original navigators of this landmass. And so this is, again, and to mind you now, my sense of passion for it only really truly is only, if you will, substantiated by, again, bringing Brother King L. Ray on, to let him really give you a real movement. And you can go, if you are, am I able to give a website?
Sure, please do. Provide a website. Yeah.
If you want extensive research and very comprehensive information about what I'm speaking to, you can go to IWB, which is called the Indigenous Water Bank, IWB.coop, and understand the dynamics of the truth about the Native Americans. There's a whole podcast series that is being done by King L. Ray on there, and he's substantiating what it is that is his own bloodline, because he was very much born in Seminole County, Florida, and Seminole, Georgia, and he has a direct connection to his native ancestry, without having to try to say I look like I got Indian in my family, or because I got certain texture here or something to that effect. No, he truly has a direct lineage to that, which shows that the Olmec Nubun presence is the original inhabitants of this landmass that look like you and me, those of us who are very much melanin dominant, or those of us, who understand the features, that come with that. But back to your question, Mikuak, I don't want to go, let me know if I'm going too long, because I can also...
No, this is good. This is very important.
Back to your question, who would benefit from that narrative? Well, look at what's going on now with the migration policies of what's taking place now in the empire.
Yeah.
Desperation to try to maintain some semblance of dominance in this landmass. And why is the migration question now the most prevalent question on this now is who belongs and who don't.
Right. And it seems that the entire legal structure reinforces that pre-existing dominant narrative. I mean, on down to the judicial layers that would prop up or reinforce or even use documents from the Catholic Empire to substantiate their claim to the land, because that's sort of what precedes that claim is the doctrine of discovery. Speaking of that word discovery. So
Absolutely.
it becomes
Absolutely.
rooted in that and reinforced by that. And as I said, even to the point of the highest courts of the land, the Supreme Court will defer to the doctrine of discovery if they exhaust their ability to justify their argument. They defer then to the Catholic Church.
The Nicene Council.
Yeah, well,
because that's part of what they decided.
Well, I would say the doctrine of discovery is probably in the 1400s, around then specifically.
Right.
That's where they kind of hang the hat on. I mean, if we go back to the Nicene Council, we're talking about the 4th century at that point.
Right. Absolutely.
But that certainly became an iteration, I would say, of how to weave a new narrative that would dominate the politics of the day. And that's what we're seeing now, whether it's in the dissolution of the Roman Empire during the time of the Nicene Council, or the Council of Nicaea rather, or it's now more contemporary with the establishment of these doctrines and these papal bulls that get enacted and serve to basically open the door for the Europeans to come and assert this discovery of lands that, and again, I think even the portrayal of those stories are riddled with inaccuracies, because one thing they won't do is they won't tell you the quantity, for example, of the populations that were actually massacred at those times of the original new melanated peoples. The genocide was ridiculous.
The genocide has been ongoing. It's been a perpetuation of the same tactics of the poisoning and the elimination and the genocide of the native indigenous people to the planet, much less to any particular landmass location geographically. So the point is that that's not something that's hard to find. And I'm saying to you that, well, people will say, well, are you lending to conspiracy theories? Well, no, because I'm a historian. I do history. I do study. So if you're a historian, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. You have to theorize because you know history. History always repeats itself, right? Yeah. History tends to be easily recognizable. And also you can reconcile it by understanding that there's things that you can find to understand what has happened and why it continues to be perpetuated as a false African narrative to give us the impression that you got some place to go back to, or you should be displaced, or you should, in fact, do a sense of repatriation to some place where you have no real identification with based on the fact, except for that you have these features and you have the melanin compound or melanin saturation that says that you have an affinity to which looks like a major majority population, which appears to be that what they call African. But there's a distinct difference. There's a distinction difference. Not saying that now we're better or we're different to the degree that we're trying to upshot ourselves into a space of trying to have this tug of war among ourselves relative to the lookalikes.
Yeah.
It's about being able to understand the dynamics of that process that puts all that into perspective. Because why? Because now if you don't have a sense that feeling that you're home, people who actually saying that they're from Africa, better be careful because they got this whole thing going now. If you are not claiming your native status or your status as where you are, then you will be on that list to be deported to where you say you're from. So the question and discussion hasn't gotten to that particular dynamic yet, because if you want to be removed from the space of where you are based on saying that you have every right to be here, not because they dragged you over here and you had reparations, in your forte for a negotiation surrounding being repaired for something that happened to those of us who had the experience of slavery, that which could be traced to that. No, the question is that if you got to be careful with your languaging, because your languaging is going to show you that they could say that, okay, well, go ahead and prove it. African ancestry, Henry Louis Gates put together this formula for trying to determine based on a scraping of your tongue or your side of your mouth, or spit on some cotton or paper, and then he'll tell you where you're from in Africa. when he himself just stated, which was circulating, I'm not sure if anybody saw it, all you got to do is put up, you can, Henry Louis Gates, the real that he says, that he said to have this conversation at this forum that he was at, and he was talking about how Oprah was saying at some conference that she was Zulu, based on wherever she got this from. She said she was Zulu and whatever. And Henry Louis Gates says, who was supposed to be the champion or the connoisseur of African ancestry, DNA, says in no uncertain terms, where he made it comically sound that he heard that Oprah was saying she's Zulu. So he called one of his assistants, the brother who actually does the testing and let the lab, and he called him and asked him, "Did you tell Oprah she was Zulu?" And the person says, "No, I didn't tell her that." He said, "Well, why is he saying?" He said, "Well, go ahead." He said, "Go ahead and tell us she's Zulu." He said, "Go ahead." He said, "Could you make it up anyway?" And she go, "Anyway, make her Zulu." And then he says, "Ain't nobody gonna believe that you can take some spit and find out where somebody's from. Where you from Africa, or get some DNA." He says this, and he goes on to say, he said, I'm not kidding you. He said, "I'm telling you the truth. He said, if I wanted to make you laugh, I would tell you a joke, but this is true." And he says that, and he giggles it away, and that was circulating for some time, and nobody stood up and said, "Wait a minute, what are you saying?" All the people that you sat up there and talked to and told them that they were not Native American. He's hard pressed on telling people they're not Native American, black people, black Native. He told Tina Turner that. He told Don Cheadle that. He told all these people who go to him, we're paying him lots of money, that they are not Native American. When they were taught by their ancestors, their elders, their generation, that they were that.
Yeah.
And he's telling them it's not true, you're not that. He's doing some lab tests, but then he's going to say that those lab tests are not to be trusted, because nobody can take some spit and tell you who are. And he says that in a full paw of an open mouth, and he says that. And you know how things go viral, and it still can be found if you can circulate it. Because I know I have it. I snatched it before they were snatched it, and we use that as evidence that we've been hoodwinked to believe that we should not take any claim as to where we are and think about ourselves as being from somewhere else, as if this landmass was being preoccupied by everybody other than us, and we only got here by way of the Ma'afa. It's a false African narrative, and it's not to negate or to mitigate a dismissal of that energy relative to that which is the population of us who are melanin dominant, but it's to say that, don't tell me I'm from somewhere where I can't claim the land of which my ancestors are already responsible for. Again, I beg the question, why is it that so many black people had land? Where they get land from? All the land that they was stolen from them. Virginia being one of the major places where you can find traces of the land that was heavily populated by our people, those in the South. And remember when the Civil War happened, and there's this whole thing, a fight about land, and Dr. King says it too, about how they were taking and giving land out to people like it was hotcakes, to the European peasants. But the native who was here already can't get no land, or can't get the land, or the land they got, they stole from that. They didn't have no land when they came here, when they came and colonized this space. And they ain't all colonized from American Indians. So I'm saying to you, there's so much things that can happen if people have a sound mind of investigatory intention, and don't get caught up in the emotion about thinking that you're now negating African and you don't want to be African because you hate Africa, or trying to project onto you this level of self-hate, that you're trying to minimize your presence in Africa. That's what the white man wants you to do, say that you ain't African. No, he tell you that he knows that. And if you do any research, you can tell that the facts are that he wants you not to understand your level of connection to the land you live on, you stay on, you grew up on, you actually were raised on. Why? Because he wants to perpetuate, to your question again, Brother Mikuak, white supremacy. That's where white supremacy started. And then everybody began to move around thinking that they could now figure out how to put themselves in dominance. Look at what Donald Trump is doing now. He's talking about going to South Africa and, trying to move on South Africa because those who stole the land are over there where after the apartheid, which they never really lost the land. They still had the land. Part of the negotiation to end apartheid was that they did the white settlers over there, the Afrikaners they call them, did not lose any of the land. And now he's talking about the fact that some of them will be moved from the land, and he wants to now implement, something that says that the white owners of the land are being discriminated. He all the way over in South Africa making decisions about what he should do about Africa. But I'm saying to you that there's so much being unloaded to us and provided to us for the science of knowing that you are native to the land of which you are. You're indigenous to where you were born, where you were raised, where you were, put into a space of stability. And you can reclaim that by letting yourself be proven that you are not from somewhere else, that you're right from here. There's only one whole system, there's only one planet. So this idea that we was not everywhere, as I always stated, I say categorically that if we weren't everywhere, we'd be nobody anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And not because we were circumnavigating from somewhere else. The whole planet was a very powerful crystal of water that was providing, inhabitation for those who wanted to settle themselves onto it. And we were developed long before we came from anywhere else. We were there, here, everywhere. And even in China, they're showing you that we were there. In fact, our beloved brother, ancestor now, Baba Wanique Shabazz, was going to every corner you can go to on this planet, every little part that you can find that was the remote, obscure places he was going to to find us. Even though his narrative still said that they were there by virtue of their own sense of navigation relative to the slave trade or the off time that we were dragged. In Brazil, the majority population in Brazil is the second largest melanin dominant population is in Brazil. All from the Ma'afa. Colombia, the next one. All these places where we are residing as natives to that landmass. Not even
Panama. Yeah, Panama, you name it. Anywhere on through Central America, you name it. Yep.
And oftentimes the question is that everybody was sitting on one side. This is the whole thing about the continental drift, right? Right. That's what we have in terms of another Pangea story, where the water and there was a drift that happened that spread it to the degree that made Africa go over to the equator, and everything else was on to we all was on one side of the equator. And every time we woke up, you realize that the water, before you know it, you have yourself in some isolated place or some place that's obscured from the full planet to say that we all came from that continent. And then everybody's everywhere, everywhere you go, and thereby everybody got to where they are by way of what? Uber? Lyft? That you have populations settled all over the planet by virtue of everything coming from Africa? What was that mass migration where all these different remnants of people and civilizations that were built, empires, great civilizations? There's more development on this side of the equator than it is even in Africa. Africa, of course, has been underdeveloped. Walter Rai talked about that, how Europe underdeveloped Africa. But the underdevelopment of Africa is very extreme by comparison to the development. And how is the Americas developed? Not because of the Ma'afa. That's an insult to say that. They the same way they tell you that the Hebrews built the pyramid under duress and slavery. Where they're trying to say where the Kemet, in terms of what they call Egypt now, is where these derived from, and those pyramids were built under duress, by aliens. If you can't get the slave story, you'll go with the Hebrews. You go with the aliens. Anything other than us being able to have the capacity to build and to construct these monuments that are immortal, have a life path, a life span, a life shelf life that outlives any modern day civilization. Anytime you see around, you got scaffolds and stuff around this pseudo technology you see now in the buildings and construction. They always got to make sure, because it's always falling apart. I was very much, precarious that it's going to be able to maintain itself over a long period of time of wear and tear. But the real science is to find out that the carrot that they talk about is over here is really over here first.
Yes. That's one I was going to mention.
That's a whole other direction.
But it's all related. And I think it's not so much a whole other direction as much as it's another aspect of the untold story that is coming to light. I know there's an author named Horace Butler who has a book called When Rocks Cry Out. It goes into great extensive length using cartography to research the presence of people described in the biblical narrative as actually being throughout the Americas. And so identifying, again, as you mentioned, Kemet and ancient Egypt and where its origin may have been identified, when in fact there's new evidence, or evidence new being over the past 150 years, we might say, relatively new evidence to support the fact, as you're saying, that Egypt was of the West. And it has been concealed. And as you mentioned as well, there being now with LIDAR and things like this, the ability to detect hundreds of thousands of structures throughout the Americas.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. I don't mean to interrupt you or cut your wisdom like that, but I'm saying to you that it is astonishing to recognize, that what we are being told, have been told, the greatest lie ever told, greatest story ever told, is that, there's nothing that relates us to where we are. Tahuti was from the West, from here. All those, that we see, that's why, I'm wanting to keep me Tahuti Shabazz, because of the origins of the inhabitants, of the nativity of my presence, my ancestor presence here, relative to the Caribbean islands. So, and in those stories, it was never any conversation about us being from Africa. Not to say that that's disparaging Africa, because back then we said, well, like Malcolm even said at one point, "Well, you left your mind in Africa." But remember, Malcolm was a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And the first level of narratives and lesson plan that was given to understand who we were was not that we were African. There was, I studied when I was coming up of the nation of the gods and earth. And at that last time, the lesson stated, that why does the devil call our people African?
Well, I want to say,
wait a minute, but wait a minute, though. I want to say this too. I also want to make sure I make this point right, because I don't want that to leave that hanging. And it says that because he wants us to believe that the people over there are the only people that we have. And that no people that we didn't come from. Remember, he was talking about us being 12, the 17 million plus the 2 million Indians. And he stated that we were Asiatic.
That's what I was going to say.
Speaking to our Asian origins, where you can go to the Shi clan and the Shi dynasties, where you see the black nobility and the black vibration energy, blacker than black. In China, in Asia, there's too much evidence of us being everywhere else and being settled and established and developing the greatest empires and the great monarchs and all that. That was us creating and building long before the total collapse of the level of our sense of nobility. And like I said, I'm doing probably a very scaled down job of giving you those facts, as our brother Kiza or King S. Nancy Cornell Ray can tell you, because of the intense research that he has done and the scrolls that he has written and what he represents, because it's irrefutable the way that he displays it. And I have to give him the propers, because most people don't want to give the propers because they're caught up in the ego of what it looks like or who is bringing the message. But we talk about mess, and you know how I do the mess piece. The mess is the mental, emotional, the spirit, and the soul. And with the GPS of knowing who you are, you can understand why you're in the mess that you're in, and why we so shut down mentally, shut down emotionally, shut down spiritually, and our soul is corrupted to the degree that we don't know what our purpose. So our physical representation of it is going to be the barometric pressure of our capacity to really flourish and function in the highest level of who we are in our five body. What we call the destiny course. You mentioned that earlier. because that destiny crosses to how we travel and do our navigation in the crossroads. Because that's the navigation. From what? North, east, west, and south. Meaning what? That's where the news of who we are.
So we can get information to where we need to be.
Absolutely.
Come on.
So all that is dynamic in terms of understanding. So the question is, if you understand that this is the science that was providing us by the Olmec science, it's been proven that the numeric system, all that, the calendrical system, all came from the Olmecs.
Yes.
And that's nothing to refute that. You can go and say, well, no, that's not true. The Mayans was a distraction or maybe a temporary detraction because of the wars and because the Seminoles are the ones who never gave in, and they means to run away. Seminole means to run away because they had their defeat. They were undefeated, especially in the wars of Florida. This is why Florida is a hotspot for DeSantis to say that he don't want to talk about, the critical race theory, because that's where the real evidence of the natives, the black tribes, are. And they want to make sure they shut that down. That's why the critical race theory, all this thing taken out of the school, because they don't want to have that come up to talk about the fiercelessness.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. The fearlessness and the fierceness, the fierceness of the warrior power of those, who were fighting those wars. Remember the five tribes, or native civilized tribes, the 5 civilized tribes, and those wars, those native wars where the black Native Americans, those of us who were here, were reaping terror on them. And they never got over that, never really forget that. Same way in Haiti, where they whipped Francis to the pulp. But they call that, they were enslaved Africans that did it, and they also got conquered by the French. But they didn't want to talk about the nativity of that, because they want to give us the impression that nothing is going on, nothing's happening. Nowhere else can you claim the landmass of this 196,940,000 square miles that consists of land and water, 139,685,000 square miles of water, 57,285,000 square miles of land, that they want you to think that you don't have no access to other than the continent of Africa. And when you go back to Africa and try to claim some land, you can't. Even with those, this is something you can do your research on, where if they give you a DNA ancestor and tell you you're from Ghana, you're from Nigeria, or you're from any of those landmass, Sierra Leone or whatever, which is probably you can find some traces of what they may appear to be those who are from there. I'm not saying that it's absolute. There's no absolute in my conversation here. But your research is going to help you maybe discern and decipher that it may not be your story. So you may be running around telling a story that's not even yours because you're just taking it from a narrative. But in those documentation, it tells you in the fine print that you can't use this uncovery or this chemistry of your being from such a place and use that as a basis for repatriation or a basis for citizenship. You don't got no right to go back and say, well, wait a minute, by the way, where are my ancestors? I asked you the question. I know that, you have a mixed incarnation as well, Brother Mikuak. Yeah. But you can go and ask anyone, usually ask them, do they know any Africans in their family?
Mm-hmm.
And more than likely, they're going to tell you no, they have no idea of any African cousins, even though they say that you look like thus and so, but you don't have no direct connect family lineage that you say is African, other than the fact they tell you that's your narrative. And then if you ask them, do you have any natives in your family, any Indian in your family, any Native American in your family, what you going to hear?
Yeah, you're going to hear about the cousin or that grandmother, that,
Right. Yeah. And I'm saying to you, that's evidentiary. That's not something that's okay because we don't want to be black or because we hate African or whatever. The point is that, goes to my point, making peace with your parents is making peace with yourself to understand that the level of disassociation or dissociation from ourselves relative to what has happened based on the Ma'afa because there's still a question as to why there was not a world war. For the act of war, for the act of aggression that came, you went to somebody else's land, somebody else's country, continent, and stole people and took them over here for how many years? 200 years, 400 years? And there was no level of revolt and resistance that came from a world war. Not just people who were revolting once they got here or once they revolted here. As they say, they revolted on the plantations and the resistance movements and the abolition movements. They can say that was happening relative to what happened internally, but there's never been a claim from any of those countries to come and say, we come to get our family. Or international law was violated.
Yeah.
There was never that conversation had. And to the degree that we look at it, because if you were a slave and you were actually, captured, kidnapped, and made the force under duress, for the violation that happened, because there was an act of war. And the people who were working the land, if that be the case, are prisoners of war. And what is the war decree? And what is the rules regarding that kind of kidnap? Same way as they decimated and get rid of people, there's a claim you have if you're a prisoner of war. How you should be treated and how you should be, whatever. But that never applies to us for some reason. It didn't apply to us. Doesn't apply to us. Right now, the Palestinians are now looking at where they're trying to act as if they can displace them from their land. And because the rules of war is that if you have a war where you dominate and you take over the landmass, or you kill the people, or you dominate and you win, you're supposed to allow them to come back into their space and place of origin. They're saying, no, once you go, we're going to make it a resort. They're saying this outright. The level of desperation from Mikuak and Brother Ruben is that we have to be able to get back to the simplicity of understanding that the science of the Olmecs have been suppressed and repressed to try to hide the facts of the Black natives who were here as the Olmec dynasty, the empires, and the Nubian empires, and what we represented, and how much we built, and how much we knew. We were very much scientifically sound, and we taught everybody what they know. And that's not to brag. It's not bragging rights. That's just dealing with the facts. The facts help that. And maybe let me tell you something before you say that. I had a conversation with Jose. Now, Jose took on upon himself, that which he did to bring forth what he was able to based on his capacity to do so. I'm not taking that from him. But he himself knew, talking to me, sitting there blacker than blue, that he knew that the Olmecs was a very significant generational reference point to what's going on with the Central and South and North America, based on the Aztecs, the Zapotecs, and the Incas and all that. And he knew that, but that was not for him to be able to disseminate that, given his own incarnation and who he represented as being half Mayan and half European. But he knew that, and how I know, because I was with him directly, and I got evidence of that based on our conversation, and also him knowing well what it represented for that which was the return of the ancient.
Come on.
And the ancient Maya is only the illusion of that, because they were the ones that were the distractors, and they were running a block for the Olmecs, that they became the ones that now take claim for the calendrical, all the science. And all you have to do is do the research and and do your discernment to understand where the information is coming from, where it's proven to be that. Not to take anything away from the Mayans. Because even Jose had a battle with the neo-Mayanists, who really was challenging him for the long count. Remember that? You were around for that when the long count was being disputed.
Yeah.
And the dream spell was being disputed because it didn't seem to synchronize or to factor into the long count. And then he proved that the harmonic convergence put all and the dream spell actually was the overlay. The dream spell was not the Mayan count. It was not a Mayan calendar.
No, it was a harmonic module to harmonize all the timekeeping systems. Essentially, that's how it was essentially intended to be applied, from my understanding of it. And so, of course, as you say, the Mayanists or those tracking the Mayan long count, traditional long count, it would seem amiss, because it's not meant to be applied like a linear count. It's not the purpose of
Right.
that particular tool.
Right, because it's not linear.
It's radial,
cyclic. It's
cyclical,
radial.
radial, and even
Right.
spiritual, spiritual, we might say. Also,
Absolutely.
fractal as well, as Ruben said
There you go.
earlier. Really,
Absolutely.
the perfect way to characterize it is a fractal measuring stick that can be applied to any origin point. So it's not to say that there's only one origin point. And I think this also speaks very clearly to the story. What you're sharing today is when we do accept the narrative that's fed to us through academia, through the Western institutionalization of education and such, then we're made to believe that there's only one origin for the story or for that particular point of view. When actually what we're talking about are multiple origins of story from
because the indigenous have multiple
points
calendars.
of view.
They have multiple calendars.
Yeah, well,
this is why
2012
was the conversion. So what, 25,000 years is what the 5,792 years. I think it was the three conversions of those timelines were coming together. It was a convergence.
Yes, very, very,
of
very
those
much.
Timelines.
Which I'm glad you.
144,000 Baktuns. Right?
Baktun days, 144,000 days of the 13th Baktun complete.
Right.
And as you mentioned, the convergence, but I find it very interesting because you and I were together in Chichen Itza for that particular ceremony, an acknowledgement from the Itza Maya community and the local communities in Chichen Itza.
For the wisdom keepers, right.
With the wisdom keepers. Ruben at that time was in, if I'm not mistaken, were you in Palenque for that particular ceremony, Ruben? December 21st, 2012, that passage? You guys were swimming in Palenque because I remember it was flooded, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
But what I point that out to just simply say, Wanique, that one of the reasons we wanted to have you in this commentary now is because along this line that we've identified by applying the golden ratio as a numerical factor over these calendars, these timing beds, if you will, what we're noticing at this point of reaching this golden intersection of timelines is that all of these things are coming to surface. So the fact that there's been a cover-up, an obfuscation of the truth of the origins and the multiple origin stories happening in concurrence here, all of that is coming up and is subject to examination, is subject to getting
not examination,
straightened.
Scrutinization.
Sure.
Because you can examine anything, and examination doesn't usually give you to what you have as a diagnosis.
Sure.
When you scrutinize it, you're going deeper level of the
right.
intensity of knowing that there's a deeply hidden cover-up, as you stated. Because the cover-up is based on trying to remove the birthright.
Yeah. And that's the bottom line. I guess that's the point we're getting to here, is just to say, back to the question I posed, rhetorical question, really, I mean, we already know the answer, but just to put it in the form of a conversation, who benefits? Well, those who've falsely claimed precedent on the land itself, period.
It's about the land.
It's always been about the land. And that's
absolutely
back to the claims coming out of Europe with the doctrine of discovery, fueling them to make their claims in droves on behalf of the royalty of Europe. You know, all of that being said. So with this process, the point I'm making is we're at a window of opportunity right now where these conversations have to be had, because obviously along the concurrent timeline, we can see what's happening. It's a further obfuscation of these truths. And without having this conversation, and I know there are others out here in the internet having channels that are exploring some of these themes, some of the conversation of this nature, particularly younger people are looking at these questions very, very actively, you know, because they are inherently discerning the overlay of the boo-boo that doesn't resonate with them at all. So they're not even fooled. And so they're endeavoring to do the research as well. And people are drawing their own perspectives and conclusions, maybe to a certain degree, though there are certain layers and everything is connected. And I think that's the piece. And we understand that there's certain points, for example, when you look at the history of the Olmec along the timeline with the other groups, as you mentioned, there is certainly lapses, it seems, in time or at least not clarity about the time of interaction, for example, of the Maya with the Olmec. So at which point were the Olmec interacting with the Maya? At which point were they transmitting the knowledge
Right.
that then
That's
becomes
right.
inherited and then attributed to the Maya, largely because that's who was,
That's,
it was attributed by the ones who maybe encountered them. But then again, we don't even know the accurate portrayal of who the so-called Europeans did encounter, because they never really, it hasn't been forthright, because then that brings into question again ownership of the land. Who are the original owners?
right.
They can't admit that that's who they encountered, because then it turns their entire argument on its head. So they have to say, well, we just encountered a certain group of people, a certain type of people, versus the Nubun anchor that would have been
because they
who,
want to make it more closer to timeline that they can generate a sense of reference. So
reference and yeah.
And I mean, the reference to the degree that now saying that, well, this is the best narrative that we can have, because any other narrative is going to displace us all over the planet. Because every native, indigenous native, whether they be from the black darkest of the blue, the natives to those who come into the phenotype, or neo melanin, it's still going to be the sense of those who understand that their heritage. I remember when I was doing, when I went to it wasn't Chichen Itza, it was the other city in, it'll come to me in a minute, it starts with a C, I don't know why I'm doing a blank right now. But when I traveled there and I took a collective of brothers and sisters there for us to be able to explore the step pyramids.
Koban?
No, it comes to me, and if you keep naming them, it's going to come up.
Okay.
So as it comes to you, go ahead and bring
Chumayel.
No. What's the man? I don't know why I see it, but I don't know why it's kind of strange. But we took that junket, we took that exploration, and we went around and we were looking at some of the the very definitive structures that looked as though it was created by something that was more recent than it was in terms of how it was able to maintain its integrity.
Mm.
And the integrity of that was based on the building of that particular step pyramid. But see, now when we come back to the more closer, we talk about the mounds. You don't find mounds in Africa in great presence than you do when you find the mounds where in Central
In the
South
Americas.
America.
Absolutely.
And those mounds are not just mountains of something. No, those are civilization. Those are the overlay
Layers, layers and layers. Exactly.
And if you ever decide that you want to go dig deep into those layers, you're going to find a whole nother evidentiary case of that, right, which is necessary. Why do you think you're finding these the helmet? The helmet heads buried all over. Everywhere you go, they find it. They finding helmets buried in New York City.
Oh boy!
I got to pull it up. It's there. They finding these heads, these Olmec, these colossal heads. Why? Because if they used their head, they knew that this timeline of what we fall a great fall in the greatness and the magnificence of the civilization that we had. We have to understand that we have to understand the fall from grace. But they were planting themselves and keeping themselves very much present where they start digging. And the more they dig, the more they find. And that's why they got to stop digging or stop letting you know they dig it.
That's what I'm saying. They stop funding it. They're stopping digging it because they can't risk more evidence getting surfaced that further refutes any claim they have that precedes anybody else's claim, whether by orientation or by force. In this case, it's always been by force, because we know those by orientation would be those who've been hoodwinked to believe they're from somewhere else. And that's a summary. That's basically what we're talking about right here.
Well, that's and then you feel displaced. You don't feel at home.
Right.
And then if you don't feel at home, then you have no claims. Because now you're saying that you're here by default. and you're not
of who?
here.
Whose fault?
Whose fault? That's right. That's
The
right.
fault, yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's the point. You know, and once you start getting into recognizing that you have to make a claim. Now, the claim is not to try to make any minimization of those who actually inherited landmass, inheriting civilizations, and then also thereby inheriting the glory of or the claim of ownership, which is the last junket of that was be the Maya or the Mayans. But my point I was going to make is that when I went there, and I typically always go and you have your little digital recorder, and I always make sure that while we're having this tour guide taking us around, showing us these great monuments of the step pyramids, blah, blah, blah. And I'm always out the front because I was asking the question. I said, well, can you talk about, the Olmec? And they always light up because they know that they're giving you the tourist version of what you're seeing. But if you say and you trigger them with that Olmec remembrance, they admit, and I have it on digital recording where two out of the three of my tour guides said, yeah, the Olmec, those are our our ancestors, our grandfather, our great grand, and they say it.
Yep.
But he said, no, but he said, but I can't because I'm here, because they're telling me that I need to make sure that, the tour is based on what you're seeing in front of you.
Yeah, because they're serving European audiences usually.
Absolutely,
so reinforce the clientele that they're serving. Because if Mexico's known for anything, it's hospitality, and so along with that hospitality, we'll just nuance the story that we're going to tell the average visitor here.
Cozumel is what I was.
Cozumel. Yeah. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, that's where I was. And we were having these tour guides, and I was asking the questions and teaching also the students that were with us about us recognizing that this is the landmass. They even after a while they stopped us or forbid us from even playing the drums. You couldn't go there. You couldn't go in there and play drums anymore. No. You know what I'm saying? Because you were uplifting spirits. They didn't want you to. You had to come in. You couldn't even go near the pyramid. They had it all chained out. And we would break, and we would defy that. I know I defied. I said, "You're gonna stop me from going to my ancestral ruins." So I would go, and I would actually go. Me and a couple others, and we would go and just do it. And then we would take the risk of whatever they were going to do, and arrest us or whatever, fine us or whatever. And it just so happens that they never were able to approach us after we did that. But I got pictures of myself inside some of those pyramid structures, because I wanted to make evidence of me doing homage to my ancestors. The ancestors that built this, and why is it that in the presence of those who are still those who are inherited or genealogically or generationally, from that line, why has there not been anything built anywhere near what we see in these places that we're marveling at?
It's true.
Because it's what happened. What happened? Was it a cognitive collapse? That you no longer could do anything other than just sit there and marvel and ooh and ah and have bragging rights about pyramids that we can't even find out what the formula for making those major, huge box art concretized weighing tons.
Yeah, huge.
And they had no cranes. There's no semblances of cranes. You don't see drawings of cranes and everything, on the hieroglyphs or whatever they really call it in terms of the writings, on the wall and how they were building that. Because why? Because back then the neurological brain capacitance was fully engaged. They were not operating on what we now call 5-10% of our brain. So we can only create through survival, not creating through ingenious scientific chemistry. Because they knew the science of what? Gravity. When you understand the science of gravities and particles, you could be able to lift anything and build anything because you know the science of what? Alchemically, and you also know the science of what matter does. And this is when you have a full brain, a whole brain, what they call, a balanced brain of knowing how to make something that will be able to sustain you and long outlive you and other entities in this world, because that's the power of creation. So I say that to say that we have to do the research and we have to give homage, and so we can get the blessings. Honor thy mother and father, so your days may be long.
That's
And
right.
then when you find out the truth and you understand the truth, then you can make peace with your parents for being left out or not being properly informed about what you represent and what you build and what you have inheritance of. And once you understand the inheritance, then you get back into systems. The system we want to get into, if I may, talking about is cooperatives. You get back to the cooperative system, cooperative economics. And this is part of what is represented in the IWB.coop, Indigenous Water Bank. Because that, obviously having access to our own aquifer, people talk about free land all the time and all these things, but they never talk about water. But you're going to need water for everything you're going to do in any landmass. To build anything, you're going to have water.
That's
a
right.
water source. Right? And water is the majority of the planet. Our bodies are about 90% or whatever, 75 to 90% water. Our brain is the same. So if you're going to have any ownership of anything, the first thing you need to do is control where your water is coming from. And so therefore, as a result, again, IWB, the Indigenous Water Bank. So you have a bank of water that you can now use for anything you need, so you can have the irrigation you require. You can have the systems of plumbing that you need to move things through, because water is the source of life. So IWB.coop, you'll see that we have water. The first thing you're going to see when you open up that website is that water, the water supply, which was BPA-free bottling, and have been given and granted for the last 9 years and 10 years, 9 years, the best water in Atlanta, in Georgia, the best water, the highest quality water. Because that's part of the liberation strategy. That's what you want to do when you talk about reclaiming stuff, not just to walk around with bragging rights and trying to displace somebody else because you want the recognition or the acknowledgement of that. No, it's about the building of a cooperative model. The cooperative model is going to be the supposition of what takes place relative to the trade system. Has to go back to a cooperative model. And Mikuak, you well know, I spent how many years in a co-op, in a vegan vegetarian co-op as a board member and the president of the board, learning the basics of how you work on co-ops on a local level.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about the international co-op. In fact, we're in the year 2025. It's the International Year of Co-ops. And everything that's taking place that's going to be sustainable is going to be a cooperative model, understanding what we can do among ourselves to member and own, to be members of and owning our right to life, and what it calls, sustainability, food sustainability, and food, protection, and land protection, and everything that comes with how we take and deal with the wealth and deal with the equal distribution of the wealth that we have. It has to be on a cooperative system. The capitalist system is a dead system. It's not sustainable. It's now on its deathbed, but it's definitely something you have to look at in terms of how to use what is the monetary value of the barters of goods and services through the onset of that which is the cooperative model. That's what the susus are about in terms of our family lines, where we should have that, where we could create a Black Wall Street, create a Rosewood, create those type of systems that we were trading among ourselves. And everybody benefits. Nobody had excess just because they want to have a whole lot, and then not bringing it back into a coffer with those who don't have. Scientific socialism, they call it. So the question is, if you really truly are about building a world and reclaiming the world, don't let nobody tell you that you don't belong somewhere and trying to get you to go back somewhere that you never have any knowledge of, or when you go back you have to rebuild because it's underdeveloped. It's not a bad thing to do that, but don't give away and leave the value of what is here. It's more gold and diamonds and minerals here on these shores, but I'm saying here, I'm talking about, I'm in the Americas. They won't tell you about, what's going on in the Grand Canyon and all these places, these sacred places they're trying to keep you away from. So you don't have a sense of what you have access to, what your ancestors and your people had built and built from and built great empires through. And to maintain your sense of ownership is not to say, well, I'm from here. No, you can do the search and research and say, if you're I'm born in Brooklyn, County of Kings, Kings County. And I claim my native heritage is that Brooklyn landmass where I was actually birthed when I first drank the water on the planet.
Ashe.
And that's what acclimated me to the planet.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I speak from that level of what the chemistry, the alchemical infusion of that water, H2O, that gave me who I am relative to my ancestry, which was my Virgin Island mother and my Trinidadian father lineage. And not do the Ma'afa, because there are places and spaces where that was something, an isolated thing, but it wasn't the totality. That's not an absolute story. And you got to stop telling the story as an absolute story, because now you remove yourself, disempower yourself, disengage yourself from your rightful ownership. And once you understand that you did that voluntarily. And then those who are the detractors, those who are the land grabbers, those who are wanting to perpetuate the white supremacist, doctrine, get to now claim that this is their place in space, and you got to go back somewhere. And they're afraid of the saturation of the one drop, that melanin drop, where they know it's going to totally eliminate their presence as being dominant in any place, even though they resist. So now everything is based on they don't care. It's all out. You see how brazen they are. They're not trying to hide anything. They ain't talking about doing it in the quiet and closed doors. It's the last hooray. It's the last vestige of their existence, as their existence was never sustainable, based on the lying, cheating, raping, and pillaging, and totally dismantling and genocidal attacks on the people, the native people, the indigenous people of this planet. When we say indigenous, what do we mean by indigenous? We mean in the genes of us. We are the owners of that dynamic. We are the ones who are making the owner, the queen of the planet. And I'm not saying that as any type of a class, caste system, hierarchical, I'm better than you. It's about us understanding that if we get back to the cognitive resonance and the morphic resonance to create a unified force, all the indigenous people of the world needs to come together and fight against the tyranny of this infusion of that which is the desperation of the suicidal collapse of this particular empire, because it was inevitable. It was bound to come. We talked about it for years. I went to many workshops and lectures that I was actually the master of ceremonies, where we had all the great scholars and African scholars and all the other people, scientists and people who are actually talking about the fact that this is the day we're in. We're living in it. Why are we still breathing oxygen and still having the capacity to interact at this most auspicious time? Because there's a presence and there is a meaning and there is a purpose for your being here. And you can live in the shadow of that, the shadow of being a white Galactic World-Bridger, or you can live in the light of that. You can understand how to navigate, your Earth families, do the cycles until you get to 13, then you have another capacity, another 13, and another 13, and you get 4 13s, and then you say to Brother Ruben, who actually is your perfect support partner, your perfect analog partner.
Yeah.
That's why y'all always rocking and rolling so easily, because y'all have that agreement in your destiny cross. But I'm saying to you that once you get to understand the truth of who you are and you use that as the basis for your level of interaction with every element of life, every particle of life, you begin to understand, well, who am I? Well, I harmonize in order to equalize. My only opportunity. I seal the store of death. What the galactic tone of integrity guided by the power of heart. That's my coordinates. And then when I get to navigate through these different cycles, so I get to have an understanding of what it is to navigate through, through the monkey, navigating through the Skywalker, my Earth families help me navigate my life force. And I'm gonna say to you, I'm gonna tell you, I'm not gonna give you a quick preliminary of me writing my book, putting that into perspective and showing you how things chronicalize in the way that I get to where I'm at, to where I'm sitting in front of you right in this space and place that I be in right now. And what I had to chose to and was able to endure to get to this point where you said to me, Brother Wanique, I want you to come on the show on the 19th episode. The number 19 that was very much disseminated by Taineta. Why Taineta Muhammad? Why do you think the Honorable Elijah Muhammad sent Taineta Muhammad to Mexico to study? That's how she got to Mexico. He said, go study the science of the ancient Olmec and the New Booms. And also under the guise of what the Mayans represent. And she went over there and she did the decoding of the 19. And that 19 was the vibration of the codons, understanding how the 19 cycles of those archetypes, which brought us back to the fullness of the 019 code, right? Well, you got the archetypes, you got those solar cells, and those solar cells and architects are representative of how many faces of the creator. And the sun signs, because we're sun people, we're not lunar people. We're not talking about Looney Tunes, you know what I'm saying? We're not talking about, secondary or life force that gets the love and energy from the sun, the solar light, that solar energy, which is a very powerful infusion. So we're sun, that's why there's sun cycle, there's sun glyphs, right? They're not moon glyphs, they're sun glyphs. Because we're suns, we're gods, and we're the sons, and we have 20 faces of how we interact, and we all get a chance to navigate those other aspects of ourselves. But understanding the mess that we're in, the physical body, the mental, emotional, spirit, and soul, that's what we're here to clarify, to how we get ourselves back into a homeostasis and a clear balance of who we are. And after we go through all the things that we're here to endure, the things that are not here for us to be able to articulate the best life that we have to live. And it's going to be those challenges where you come to your downside, where there's the ebbs and tides and the ebb and flow of who we are. So I'll stop there. I wanted to get that vibration out there so we can go in a more practical sense. And I guess I can close out when we have to talk about making peace with your parents, so you can be able to have some level of authenticity in your life. Because I don't care what you think about in terms of thinking that if you have some issues or grievances, you have those resentments about what you think those parents did or did not do or didn't represent. When you're sitting here having that conversation by virtue of what they did, which is the honoring of the agreement. Because if you have a body to even talk about them, that means they did their part to the best of what they represented and what you wanted to have from them and extract from them the DNA, the geological DNA that may be dormant in them that's coming out of you. That I'm sitting here now, I'm the best of what came out of my mother and father. And the best that I have is to only love and appreciate them and to forgive them, because they gave me the opportunity to get here, for getting here. So that's why you can say you can forgive and you can forget, because you can't give without getting. You can't get without giving. Or you ought to understand that principle of the reciprocity of life, and that those parents, your left and your right side, your left and right lobes, you have your body is split down into two halves, two lobes, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 testicles, 2 ovaries, to everything, because you've been granted one by each parent who gives a pair of entities, gave you one capsule of who you are, so you can be embraced as them, because you are your parents together forever. So therefore, you gotta be careful what your projection of what you think is objectified is subjective, because every time you think about what you think happened to you because of what you didn't get from them and why you feel that they didn't do what they were supposed to do, that alone starts the meltdown, the Medea effect, as Dr. Puka used to talk about, where you start counting down your chromosomes because you're in the self-hate and self-judgment of those that provided you access, even though you think it was just an arbitrary relative act that happened because they were bumping and grinding in the back of a car or back on the elevator or somewhere in the home in a cozy environment, whatever. Whatever it took for you to look at that access and that opportunity, that portal to enter into this gateway, you took that opportunity and you had a very much assessment of what you were getting into when you came through the testicles and went to the ovary and created yourself. And now have a development of those. And if you give thanks and gratefulness to those who provided you, then you can have the optimal life. But I'm telling you, it's a rough ride, because you got to go through that process of processing the judgments that come up that set you down chemistry-wise, and also create a meltdown or a knockdown of your capacity to stay optimally healthy. So what you can think about, what I say when people talk about illnesses and diseases or having some type of malady, you have to always go back first. The first, if I was practicing which I don't practice medicine, because when you practice, you got to get to learn how to do it. So let's keep practicing it. But when you get to a point where you understand how life works and how the body represents yourself, and you're representing of 23 chromosomes by 2, you got 23 chromosomes offered to you, both of your parents. 23 by 2, you get 46 altogether. It makes you 1. It becomes a chromosome. And that chromosome is touching, and it's like an X. X marks the spot, right? And you begin to understand what your unknown qualities are. And you begin to now move through that DNA process and sequence. So you can now develop and become the best of what they represent, because you're the best of what they had to offer. And if they didn't get to the point where they even fulfill their obligation relative to their life path on a higher resonance, then you don't get into the judgment of that and say, well, my father was a drunk, my mother was this, that, and the other, and start condemning yourself because you are them. You can only say it's a self-talk experience or a self-talk exploration. But once you get to a point where you love yourself unconditionally, then when you start consuming and living a life that is optimal in terms of what you're going to provide for this body's well-being, you are now taking care of those parents, giving them the best life, and you can live them as you and fulfill your purpose as them, because you are them together forever. So you want them to get along. That's why if you want them to hug, you got 2 arms. They gave you one each arm. You can come hug. You can have them hold hands. You can have them do all kinds of things as you. That's fine. I'll dissipate a little bit and move down. But I wanted to really bring that into full disclosure. I want people to really know that the GPS, the Galactic Purpose Signature, the initiation of your purpose based on that chart and that comprehensive report about who you are incarnated about, helps you to better really truly appreciate, understand, overstand your life purpose. And if you really want it to happen, it's irrefutable. And Mikuak and Brother Ruben can tell you. And you see he signs in as 113. The solar Skywalker. You got the solar World-Bridger. These are incarnating instructions for your life navigation. That's why I call it a GPS versus just a GS or galactic signature. It's a galactic purpose signature because it gives you opportunity to navigate what? North, east, west, and south. Red, white, blue, and yellow. Those are the coordinates that keep you fully embraced in the dynamic of what you represent as a human soul species. I yield now, brother.
We give thanks, Baba. I put the link in the live chat for folks to follow up with your WaniqueShabazz.com website to learn more about the GPS readings that you provide. Yes, absolutely. So encouraging people to check that out, visit that. Please get to know yourself and also get to reconcile with your parents as a way to truly
as yourself. As
what I'm saying. I'm getting there, Baba. I'm getting there. As yourself, man. I'm there. I'm with you.
Right.
So we want to encourage you to certainly endeavor to explore more about that, because this is a part of the liberation protocol, it seems.
Right, it is. It is. And the only way that you can get through any diagnosis, if you love yourself and love yourself as your parents and forgive your parents and have unconditional love and therefore treat them with that love by your ancestors. So you don't have to go find them, dig them out of the grave or whatever. You just got to love yourself because you're loving them as you. And when you love yourself, then you're not going to let yourself consume anything. You're not going to let yourself, do anything that's going to be detrimental to yourself. You got to protect your parents and protect their lineage, your generational lineage, as yourself, as a full composite of what? Of 206 bones and all the things that come with your DNA process and your DNA, tumble.
Well, I also have some codes to share. Ishelle brought to my attention. She sent us a text as we were talking. And just as these codes do, they sort of instruct the synchronicity and meaningful alignment and arrangement. And she was saying that the three of us add up to kin 65. 126 plus 86 plus 113 deduces to 65.
Serpent.
Yep. And that you guys, in other words, the three of us, add up to her personal get phi day kin 65. Now, that's a lot. That's a mouthful. What that basically means is she's actually entered what we've discovered is something called a person's get phi day. So the golden intersection of timelines for their personal phi day in their life cycle occurs approximately at the 44th year, the third month. So basically, it's essentially when you turn 44, you can count 108 days from that point forward, and that will be your phi ratio day in your life. Okay, so this is a new discovery in the synchronic order, and this is something that before I guess we identified it. I don't know anybody else who's identified this, but it's very interesting that synchronistically, our combined kin will equate to her get phi day, and she's literally in. If you had this day, if you're say over 44 or over 45 years old, you've already had this day in your life. So we can reflect back to where we were at age 44 in 3 months, basically, or 108 days after we turned 44 years old, to be exact. Whatever day that is, that's a specific node of harmony in your life. I know when I reflect back on where my get phi day was, I was literally leaving a long assignment. I'd worked with Nexus for several years. I was heading on a journey to India and to Europe in my own path. So that was a very interesting node for me of what was going on around that timing. So similarly, she's pointing this out for us. The three of us combine in synchronicity to make the code of her get phi day in the future. So that'll be.
At 65 is also the seasonal.
Correct. It's the seasonal marker as well.
Right.
It's true. It's one of the one of the seasonal markers for sure. As you sum together the value of 65 times 4 being 260 total when we look at the Zolkin count. And so it also says, check this out. Here's another inverse synchronicity that on May 28th, 2025, her get phi day, the unified cosmic time is kin 86. That day. So that's achieved when you combine the traditional long count kin with the galactic dream spell kin. You get what's called your unified cosmic time kin. So unified cosmic time, or UCT, is 86 that day. Being that you are a decoder yourself, I thought I would take a moment and share these recognitions with you, because it just further emphasizes the beauty. And she's saying the UCT for that day is kin 86. That's what I'm saying, that his kin happens to be the UCT that day. So it's in other words a combination of both long and galactic counts.
Galactic count
are the factor 86 that day. So very, very, very profound. Another interesting profound UCT will occur when we get to October 14th, 2025, and that being the UCT 104 for that day is the UCT.
Oh, man.
So that's powerful. We talked about 104. That's the seed, and it's also the factor of 52 times 2. It's the Venus round. It holds many, many layers of resonance, that particular factor. So I just wanted to posit those here as Shell shared those with us from backstage. Because
I think it's important to note also that, these numerical sequences and numerical calculations is where we represent the accuracy of who we are. Because remember, the whole adage is that numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie.
And numbers are universal.
Yes.
And I also know that all is number and God is number.
Yes.
Because the mathematical sequence of anything based on the power of calculation all adds up or subtracts or divides into one basic common denominator, whatever the energy may be. And that means that those numbers in terms of the 13 codes, 13 tones, the 20, fingers and toes, right? The embodiment of our level of physicality on this dimension is based on the 1320 time sequence and time frequency. We are natural time walking and talking. And we have to maintain a sense of connection to that, to the digits that we have, to maintain our sense of grasp of the truth and understanding of life. And that is another way to be peace with the parents, because without them providing the chemistry for this development of this physical navigational tool on this dimension, we would not be in existence. And people say, well, I'm not a body, I'm a spirit and having a human experience. Well, you could have been a spirit without having a human experience. You don't have to come down. When you come down to this dimension to understand the maturation, the materialization of life in terms of structurally experiencing limitation because of your infinity in the essence of your spirit and your essence of your soul. There's no restrictions. There's no containment. But when you come down intentionally and you create yourself access to this dimension, to a physical dimension, a physical representation, you want to be able to experience what it is to have a humble experience with limitation. Go to the bathroom, have to eat, have to do these things temporarily. But it's a long line of entities trying to get to this dimension. And if you went through the process of really truly insisting upon being here through that powerful absorption of magnetic absorption, you know that you have an intention and you have a purpose, a pure possession of this life.
Absolutely. So we like to encourage people to visit lawoftime.org to decode their galactic signature. And for further exploration, we definitely encourage you to visit waniqueshabazz.com, because he can help you take that galactic signature a lot further into its GPS orientation and help you really clarify that code and how you show up at this time on the timelines. So I tell you what, we've been holding space together here for, at this point, about 3 hours. I think we've been doing quite well. And I just want to take the time to acknowledge those who've been with us this entire time in the live chat, as well as our support in the background with Ishel and Alejandra and other friends who show up consistently to be in this frequency together with us. As we opened this space on the Gregorian date, October 7th, we did so, as he identified earlier, Ruben, that is, he identified that was Kin 92, the magnetic human. And we entered this space as a ceremony, because for us, really, the part of our work and our contribution in this collective remembrance process is to provide coordinates that show the nodes of collective harmony. And so in making that conscious, I know we're going to probably lose Ruben here on the screen. I'll just flip over to that real quick. But in making that conscious, this is a part of the experience in engaging this conversation with you today and helping unpack some of these layers that have been, as I said, long obscured and dispossessed. Literally the people made to be dispossessed from the land itself. And I really do look forward to having King Etznab on in a future episode so we can explore that perspective much more deeply and provide some of the method that he's been doing for his research to hold space and encourage others to do research similarly toward the fulfillment of recollecting these truths. Because that's, again,
he does. He has a lot of scrolls on that website where he decodes. He does a powerful dispensation of the decoding. He has, and also his significance to that relative to him recognizing his own purpose in terms of being the closer and the opener of cycles and that kind of vibration. And that is the thing that simply what we have to do to be able to understand how things, the loom of the illusion, the loom of Maya comes together. Because him being the white crystal mirror, where everything is about being able to bring forth the order, and he had really truly, I have to give him that props, because when you see it being deciphered and decoded before your very eyes, how we move from that mirror into the blue storm. Where that is a navigation of understanding what the storm. What does the storm do? The storm is one of nature's powerful expressions of energy. The impact of the storm reaches everyone, commanding respect and humility. But yet, the roots of the storm are humble. Simple drops of water, precipitation from the sea gathers until it combines with the force of the wind into something mighty and what? Transformative. This is a lesson for us if we wish to really embrace the storm energy. We seek the center of the storm. We have to be calm whilst all around us changes. We have to be still whilst all around us transforms. The stronger the storm energy, the more important it is to stay centered. When we stay centered without apparently acting, we will be able to catalyze great changes. Just as the storm returns to the sea, be self-generating. We have to be responsible for our energy, and great things are possible with the storm. Lose your center, and you might find yourself getting drenched. So if I can offer an affirmation for this 219, which is a very significant and very sacred number for me, based on me interacting with a powerful, powerful force of the 219. And this is another synchronicity of me being able to be here now, having this conversation unfolding. I haven't spoke publicly for who knows how long. It's been more than 2 years. You mentioned before about my affiliation with Mimic. I have long dissipated from Mimic into a whole new vibration of understanding who I am and what I gave, and bridged that situation to where I am now. But the affirmation, if I may, I'm asking permission to provide the storm affirmation so we can move through this next plasma as the blue spectral storm with the ideal representation of what? Catalyzing self-generation energy. So this is the affirmation. I'm going to do it in triplicate. I'll do it thrice so we can all sit nice and really truly understand how we can entice ourselves to be the best and move ourselves out of the vice. So the affirmation is as follows. I self-generate freedom of energy, energy of freedom. I self-generate freedom of energy, energy of freedom. I self-generate freedom of energy, energy of freedom. Om. Thank you for allowing me to do that, brother. I'm going to provide that. Liberation is really key to what we have to do in order to be here. In order to be here, the liberation is going to be critical, right? It's critical that we understand what we are here to do for. What does the spectrum provide us of liberation? What does liberation mean? We talk about liberation through purification. We talk about liberation through our movements that we have on the mundane level, or on the level of the microcosm of the system we live. We want to free the land. We want to also have that which is self-determination. But liberation is what key and autonomy to move freely. Freedom of what? Energy. Energy of freedom. But the liberation comes from what? The perfection of what we just came from, with the manifestation, right? The 10th tone, right? So we from the perfection of manifestation comes what? The release of liberation. So once the creation has been actualized, there is a need to let go of any conceptions of our attachment or attachments to the form it has taken. This allows the creation to generate energy in its own right and to gather momentum with the tone of liberation. But brothers, and also those who are listening under the sound of my voice, this is also the opportunity to dissolve existing structures and any elements that may be holding back the process from continuing its course. From this dissolution comes what? A new surge of of life due to all stored up stagnant energy that has been released. As in all life processes, there comes a time when the old gives way to the processes of death and decomposition, so that the energy may be what? Recycled and regenerated to be given the possibility of life again. in a brilliant new form. That's the liberation tone. The liberation tone. I give thanks, brother.
Ashe.
I give thanks.
Aho. Ahow. Well, on that beautiful note of resonance, I want to thank you for all that you anchor and the space that you provide everywhere you go, in that you are fulfilling your purpose as a way shower and a world bridger, clearly making the connections, both on our behalf as well as reminding us to have that connection of coherence with our parents, to navigate that with honor and gratitude, recognizing ourselves in them. And so I really deeply appreciate that reflection, particularly as a father of a young son as well now myself, appreciating how he can evolve and grow to hold a recognition of both his mother and father in his life path. I mean, it's a real blessing to cultivate that perspective as a parent, to one who will apparently also be evolving alongside us. So,
right, and the reason why he chose this particular time to access this dimension through the conspiracy of you and Michelle getting together. he pulled it off. He pulled it off.
Firing. He did. And I'll have to say credit to his little brother, who also put the thought form out there before us, saying he wanted a little brother. So I feel his creative free will was also in the process of informing our conspiracy to fulfill his wishes for manifesting a baby brother. So he was absolutely instrumental in helping.
Well, that's the thing about understanding these navigational processes, this science, and these tools. And I'm telling you, brother Ruben and yourself, y'all keep keep those codes and keep those numeric codes and those calculations. Keep putting those out there into the ether and the frequencies, because that's what the GF really helps to navigate. Our spaceships. Yeah. And I love it because it really truly shows the level of protection that comes with understanding numbers. I came in on a storm wave spell, so I know how significant the storm is to me and how significant it was coming out of that energy of the mirror into the death as a spiritual guide, and also coming into this liberation 219, which liberated me. Because I had very much tight experience with a 219 who provided for me the opportunity to be liberated. So significant, meaning that they will be able to sign if I can't. As significant is. As a significant other, provided for me the opportunity to be able to get myself initiated through that storm. And once we understand that we sit in the middle and the eye of the storm, we cannot be molested.
No.
And we have to be protected through the vibration of that, which is our interactions and our planetary partnerships that happen through all different directions. And in the north direction, we know that's our spirit, right? In the east direction, that's our planetary guide, as our brother Ruben is to you, 113. That's our planetary partner to help, right? Then we have in our mental direction, that's our challenge to remember. Our challenge is to understand the mental health of our system of society. Then you have what? We have the emotional, the hidden, unexpected factor. There's a whole nother coordinates of number. There's a whole different tone vibration. Because it's a hidden, unexpected factor that comes with the emotional body, which is the most very delicate body that we have the most challenging time to navigate. Because that's where we get our feeling. The healing is in that feeling. So again, I can go on. I just want to make sure that we're clear that understanding where you are. If you're lost, get you a GPS. If you're lost and kind of find your way, get you a galactic purpose signature. And that's get that vibrational energy to understand all these different nuances that you hear, Brother Ruben and Brother Mikuak, 113, and just doing the work of the ancestors.
Yes.
113 and 126.
That's right.
13 from 13 and 13, 113 and 13 is 26. That's the level of the planetary partnership and connection, energy field. They are, that which helps to move on this dimension, the physical body as well. So, okay, you got to shut me up. If I don't shut me up,
No, it's good. It's good. And I'll just posit that Ruben and I combined to make 239, the overtone storm. So we appreciate the catalyzation of the energy, and when we combine, this energy is catalyzed, and it does result in a generative quality, as we've been seeing since we were initially introduced by Delia Sky. So it's just wonderful to be able to speak this language with someone such as yourself, who speaks it so eloquently and coherently, and knows the nuance and knows the application of the new language. Because for people listening in, they can appreciate this is like learning a new language. And we know it's a galactic language. It's an Olmec language. It's a traditional language. It's a mathematical language. And so we endeavor to make it normal for people to utilize this language. That's part of our intention here, is to normalize this code speak, so people can really...
Right, the linguistics, man. You got to become bilingual or trilingual or multilingual.
Exactly.
So we can have a communication, because that's going to be the protection that we have in this collapse of the empire. We have to find ourselves out of the trouble, or we're going to be under the rubble.
Yeah.
And then we have to really be clear about having a plan of action. And I really want everybody to recognize the importance of this, the co-op. Joining a co-op, getting involved with the co-op, so you can have a share investment in yourself and own and operate a building society. You can't build anything or any type of empire or civilization without a cooperative model. So therefore, if you go to iwb.coop, you're going to see a lot of things on there. That brother does a powerful thing on music, but you also see the co-op. And therefore, if you do nothing else, get you involved in engagement with the co-op, international co-op. Because international co-op takes you out of public policy and into what we call the private sector, which is really where all the things that are created under the darkness of the womb of the private sector, where things are created, where the seeds are planted.
Yes.
And that's where you can get. That's where you can get some results, and you'll see how Brother Kesar become Key Xness Squad Ray. You'll see exactly how he has been able to establish a very powerful establishment for us to be able to maintain ourselves in the aftermath of the collapse of the empire, which is before us.
Yeah, it's happening. So now's the right time. I'm certainly going to follow up with you about that, just to tap in and determine how to connect with that and use that as guidance and inspiration as we're navigating similar opportunities to create greater frequency of cooperative economics, cooperative support. I think that's exactly the frequency of the future, as we as it has been the frequency of the ancient past. And so aptly titled today, Ancient Futures. And this really does give us a sense of trajectory for some of the aspects we want to consider as we're navigating this coherently moving forward. So thank you so much. Again, I want to encourage people to visit Wanique Shabazz. That's WANIQUESHABAZZ.com. And the link is in the live chat. Also, you'll find the link in the description of the show today, along with a more extensive bio on Baba Wanique. You can read that and get to.
And can I also plug the show on Mikuak?
Of course, please.
Map Time. You've been on Map Time quite a few times.
Of course, happy. Let's plug the show for sure.
Yeah, Map Time. In fact, I'm currently underway. In fact, doing a series with King El Ray. So if those who want to, even join us, could be even doing a nice navigation about co-ops, about rap music, because he also is an artist. Established his own genre of music called high resonance. And you'll see that, that we also talk about, the truth about Native Americans. We talk about cooperatives. We talk about rap music. We talk about everything that needs to happen, a plan of action. So we want every Sunday nights, Monday we call it, from midnight to 3 o'clock. And it's Monday, right? Monday. It's Monday. So, and you could be able to be a part of a conversation, discussion surrounding this science, this work, and also the work of what the IWB is doing as well. So that's that's WRFG, which is Radio Free Georgia, 89.3 FM, 100,000 watts of community power, independent, non-commercial, community radio. And I've been there for, believe it or not, McCall, this is my 33rd year.
Oh yeah, look at that. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I
Yeah.
just put the link in the live chat as well. Tune into Map Time Jazz 89.3 FM.
WRFG.org.
WRFG.org. That's right.
Thank you, brother. I
WRFG.
appreciate it.
Oh no, we appreciate love you, Baba. I knew that's been certainly a grounding rod there for our conversations for several occasions in the past, and so we honor and appreciate love all the great air shifters there. Your great program directorship for 33 years, as you've said. I mean, just
That's
really
it,
being an
yeah.
anchor there, and so much gratitude. Big shout out to Mother Tawnetta, who I know is or Mother Tahita.
Tahita, yeah.
And Mother
Yeah.
Tawnetta, for example,
That's right.
as well, also, and Ashe, for sure.
Yeah, the crystal serpent, the
that's
crystal
right.
serpent, yeah.
Yeah.
She's on. In fact, she was on a little earlier. She does a show from 10 to 12 every Monday night morning.
Exactly.
You know,
So
calls.
I want to definitely have her on as a guest on our broadcast at some time in the near future as well, so we could time it so we get her right after she wraps, and hopefully she could jump on with us as well, because we love to tap in with the others who speak this language. We certainly appreciate that. But I tell you what, at this point, we're going to go ahead and probably wrap this up. But thank you again so much for staying tuned with us, everybody out there tuning in. And again, be sure to follow up with Baba Wanique. Yeah, Ruben, please go ahead.
I wanted to say thank you to Baba Wanique, and very honored to be able to keep weaving the wisdom and the layers of beauty and synchronicity that this wisdom and this knowledge holds, and making conscious that it was on this same way spirit that I met Wanique at the United Nations, that you hosted that event, and it was on Resonant Eagle. So here we are 12 Solkins after that, weaving again on this same way spirit of the moon. That was actually 3 days before Day Out of Time. That year, Day Out of Time was kin to 18 white planetary mirror, the galactic signature for today. And that was a Nosphere day, was the 26th day of the 13th moon. And we were at the United Nations putting the word out and planting those seeds of awareness that
the new time, right? Natural time.
Yes.
Right.
So here we are 9 years later, and 12 Solkins later, and almost 9 years from that initial meeting. So honored to be able to keep weaving this knowledge with you and with Mikuak, of course.
Oh, thank you, brother. Damn.
Yes.
See, and y'all do so good with these sequences, man. And this correlation to timelines, which is of course the infinite timelines of natural time, law of time. And I'm really in awe of that. I'm really truly in high admiration of their capacity. I don't have that much prolificness in that. I can also figure it out through chronological thing, but you brothers are really on it when you start doing it as a calculation as a whole. And I appreciate the fact that we're maintaining a sense of diligence on the frequencies and the numbers, the numerical sequences of things, because that's how we're going to stay in the frequency of protection. Because they can't defy that. And Ruben, it's always a pleasure when I'm able to interact with you and come into your space. 113 has always been very important to me too. I might say this as I talk about 219 being very important and very significant to my life. 113 was also very significant to me as well because of when I first was early on doing my incarnating decoding and pulsing people into the GPSs. One of the first persons that I did that for was 113, Ben Skywalker, and Ben Debbie Skywalker, and she held together a tomb. She had a shrine of the dream spell and the telectanon in her home. And her whole room was like you go into going into a pyramid, going into a mound, where she had everything from the sequences of the dream spell, the daily count, and the 7777 and everything. You walk into this, you can feel the energy. So I realized the significance of how this is really truly coming full circle in terms of us honoring who we are, who our skin carnation and king carnation is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
That's another one, skin carnation. I love that. You keep coming with these, man. I love it. Always.
That's the hootie. That's the hootie.
That's the hootie. Show enough. Wow. Well, I wanted to last question, Wanique, for you. Have you been to Palenque physically in this incarnation?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And
and I think that was briefly. Because we went on a cruise, and I think we went past Palenque. No, I haven't really stepped foot back. No, not. For some reason, I feel I have. Maybe I did it in some combination. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe you'll be available, say, come this October, because we plan to have a council of great souls gather there to observe this golden intersection of timelines. So I think it might be a really profound opportunity. And also just to point out that literally it marks 13 exact tunes since December 21st, 2012, when we were last in the ceremony in that land.
Oh, man, yes.
So 13 tunes complete. 13 tunes complete.
So, Baba, do you already have the packages and set up for the travel, or you just working on that now?
It's coming together by the grace. We're open. We're just also being very mindful to approach that very sacred location in the best way possible through properly honoring the protocols of the local space holders there now, because it's a very important thing to do that in a good way, just Absolutely. To obviously navigate that. So we're just in a very organic process with just having the grace of the open invitation from the local community, from the land stewards, who also are energetic stewards of the temple sites.
And do you know what duration of time you're going to be? How many, over what span of plasmas?
Generally, I'm planning. I could say we're planning it with you right now on this call. But no, we're looking at probably. I would say probably around a 4 to 5 day window for the ceremony itself around the golden intersection of timelines. Though we are planning to extend our stay with Ruben because, as he mentioned earlier, on 2/18, his next kin, 2/18, 260 days from today, it will actually be his birthday. And so we'll be in Palenque observing kin 2/18, which will be the 103rd Zolkin completed since the discovery of the tomb of Pacal. So for these reasons, we're really anchoring this charge and this stream of consciousness and energy together with this grid of people like yourself who see the value of this. This is very rarefied air. Let's be very clear. There are many people involved in the shift of this transformation of timelines and all that stuff happening right now. Though to deal with these codes, to deal with the charge of these codes is a very rarefied frequency.
Did you, and pardon me for cutting your wisdom there.
Yeah.
But do you recall? I'm thinking when y'all went to Palenque and you came upon one of the sculptures, and I think it was you and Mama Yami. It was, of course, another storm. 239. Mama Yami.
Yeah, she's Ruben and I combined. She's actually 239.
Yeah, absolutely, 239. Yeah, but I remember that thing y'all traveled there and you saw a sculpture that had my name or a semblance of my name or a remnant of my name. Because it was Kanich Wanique, I think it was.
Kanich, it is, I want to pronounce it correctly. Ruben, actually, what's the traditional name? Halich Wanique Janab. Halich Wanique Janab Pacal. So we did notice the resonance in and I mentioned this to Ruben actually prior to us coming on air, because of that frequency of your name, what's in your name, and the fact that it's reflective in the personage of Pacal the Great.
Of the motherland, right? Of the motherland.
Of the
Yes.
motherland, exactly.
Utlan.
Of
Yes.
the
Utlan is the motherland.
Utlan, exactly. So that resonance, we posited that. I'm glad you mentioned that now. It's very good to sort of point to that as we wrap this conversation. It invites a part
And
B
also
of the conversation.
make conscious that probably Wanique knows this, but his current rotation as King 46, that's synchronized with the ancient future return of Pacal in the year 4772 on King 46, which was going to be 8 days after the closing of the 20 Baktuns or the Pictun cycle.
Yeah.
And that is one of the few dates that are recorded in the future on the west panel of the Temple of Inscriptions, where the whole dynasty of Palenque is recorded. That date on October 21st, 4772, which happened to synchronize with this King 46 resonant World-Bridger, that according to the Cosmic History Chronicles is one of the two signatures of the two twins that go to Xibalba to play the ball game with the
Olmec,
with the
Olmec,
nine.
yes.
Yeah.
That's the Olmec ball game.
So the,
River people. Yeah.
So this is a powerful then connection of this date with your energy, with the purpose of this entire mission, which is bringing back all this wisdom and becoming time. We are really in this process of embodying time and really walking our talk and remembering our purpose. So such an honor to walk this path with you and with you, Brother Maku, also, so that we can keep weaving this memory thread until we all remember on planet Earth who we are.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah, I gotta stay close to y'all because y'all are the time travelers and the decoders, and I mean that's so significant in terms of this energy and what it means for where I am in my own transformative journey, and to hear those confirmations, those significant confirmations, and those they call verifiers and verification, and to give the credits to your level of life path and to show what the protection is and what we have as protectors, and to provide it and to disseminate it. One thing I remember Jose always said, don't expect a standing ovation for for this work and for this science, but to always maintain the sense of always look for the synchronicities because they're always there. He said, always look for the synchronicities. And this is one of the things, Brother McCool, as well, I want to say to you, is that this is part of what I stand upon. Jose is powerful, but the King Exner is even as powerful, if not more powerful, based on him being the resonant understanding of that level of energy, but being the crystal mirror as he is. But I think it's important for us to note that when we really truly appreciate all that we endured and for the span of time that we've been dealing with this science, we're clear about everything that's happening is within the predictability of everything that's supposed to happen, even to the point where they have the serpent, the electric serpent, who's now the king of the empire, the one who's maintaining a sense of collapse for the serpent. And I'm sure you can decode him based on him coming into the service of the serpent, to really bring down, the diabolical empire that we live under based on the matrix, and he's glad to do it. He's happy to do it. He's tailor-made to make it happen. And like I said, people talk about him building a wall and all this migration, immigration stuff. Build a wall. We know how, let Humpty Dumpty build a wall, because we know how that story ends. Humpty Dumpty Trumpty can build that wall, because we know how that story ends. And all the king horses and all the king's men ain't going to be able to put Humpty Dumpty Trumpty and the empire together again.
Nope. Nope.
Build a wall, yes, build a wall. I always want to say, we know how that story ends. Let them build a wall.
Well, indeed, like Jericho, yeah, we know how that story ends, for sure. For sure. Well, absolutely, Baba Wanique, thank you so much for taking this journey together with us, and thank you for allowing us to have this time space together with you. It's a true honor, true pleasure. And we want to invite everybody to tune in for the next episode, 7 days' time. We'll be back again, keeping this pulse, this frequency, the Kali Day episodes of the Galactic Spin podcast. Thank you again to Ishel for the great intro video and for all the support backstage. Thank you to Alejandra for your frequency, keeping us on track and in sync. And thank you to all those who tune in with regularity to just make this journey together with us in consciousness. We give great thanks for your presence on the planet right now. Be sure, again, visit waniqueshabazz.com. Get your GPS. Sign up for, sign up. That's right. Sign up for it. You would definitely be illumined, extensively illumined in great ways to be of self-benefit to you as you navigate this journey. So with that, we wish you in Lakesh, Alakin, to all our great relations out there. One love. All right.
Tune in with the Galactic Spin podcast and expand your view. Galactic Spin podcast and expand your view.